Okay. I think we're live. I think we're good. Hi, everybody. Welcome to yet another episode of WIC TV, a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. And gang, have we got a show for you tonight? We have one more gentleman coming who should be here hopefully shortly. But tonight, we are going to be talking about young men's issues. Of late, recently, young men have been experiencing a wide variety of problems. The loneliness epidemic. They struggle with purpose. There are many different things that affect young men in unique and troublesome ways. So the question tonight is, which party or which side of the political spectrum is better on men's issues? Who is more able to fix men's issues? Okay, the left or the right? And we have some great people coming, some great guys on their way, and we have some great guys right here to talk about it. I'm going to give the mic first to GenZattorney. Thank you for being here. The mic's
All
yours.
right. Well, hey, thank you for having me. Always appreciate the invite. Good to be here. As it said, my name is Scotty O, aka the Gen Z Attorney. Currently work in private practice as an attorney in North Carolina, doing a little bit of everything, mainly criminal defense and family law stuff. So I see actually, some of the stuff that I deal with in the law, particularly with the family law stuff, kind of deals with some, men versus women's issues. But as far as the prompt tonight goes, which side of the aisle is more conducive to the flourishing of our average male. I'm here to represent that it is the right and the Republicans. I think as a brief overview of the points, I think the left has a serious issue with terms like toxic masculinity, and I think it is a core belief in there that masculinity itself is toxic, and it's very condescending and much of a turnoff to young men and who want to hear the tough love on how to, I guess, be told what you need to do to succeed and survive and do well in this world, but not in a way where it's like you're inherently toxic or you're inherently just a bad person because of your maleness. And so I think things like toxic masculinity are an issue among the left. I think it's manifested in a bunch of different ways. I think the right represents a better message, for a more aspirational message for young men. And so for those reasons, I will, and many more that we'll get into, I will say that the right is more conducive to the flourishing of young men.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. We really appreciate you, and I'm sure we'll get into it during the discussion. Next up, Mike.
Thank you. So I am also an attorney. I also work in private practice. Do you prefer Scott or Scotty O or Gen Z, or how should I call you?
Whatever you like. You want to do Scotty O is probably the easiest one, or Scott or Scotty O. But
Okay.
yeah.
So like Scott, I'm also an attorney. My current practice is in interactive entertainment, so I do a lot of video game stuff, a lot of regulatory compliance and commercial transactions, with some patent litigation background as well. And so my position here is going to be that the Democratic Party is better for young men. And this is really twofold. One is the Republican Party offers no substantive or policy-based solutions to these issues faced by young men. And therefore, they rely entirely on the culture war. And so, what the culture war has done is painted sort of this fictional Democratic Party, which we'll get into in a second, to feed young men with fear, anger, anxiety. And these are things that ultimately are damaging in the long term. So, not only do I think the Democratic substantive policies are better for young men, but I think that the culture war as a whole is, from the Republican side, is damaging to young men as well.
Okay, thank you for being here, and I'm sure we'll get into it as we go. Really appreciate you. Next up, I think first time guest on my stream, but if you've watched my show when I've gone on Raging Tomato, you've probably seen him before. Vybe, welcome.
Thanks, Wick. Yeah, actually, this is my second time on your show. One time was a call-in, but I think that was a few months ago. Thank you for having me on. I did actually request to jump on with Wick because I've been kind of in an echo chamber with a lot of people on the right in agreeing with me. So I kind of wanted to jump in a chamber where I could talk to more people and actually get some more diverse sides there. I really like this topic. It's kind of interesting. As Mike had said, there's policies that both the Republicans and Democrats have, and we can look at this as whether the policies are better for young men from Republicans, or we can look at it or from Democrats. But the other thing is we can also look at is the general consensus and behaviors of how we treat men from a Democrat and a Republican side as well. Almost like mom and dad. You've got the Republicans' dad and you got the Democrats' mom. I don't think anybody disagrees that you need the loving care support of mom, and you also need some of that rough and tugginess, masculinity from dad. So I believe that both parties do play a role in young men, and we do have different families and different makeups. Therefore, there are some good things from both sides. But I would say overall, I would fight for the right, because a lot of the things, the number one issue for men is mental health, and it does come from loneliness, toxic masculinity. A lot of these things have been kind of drawn out of them and taken away from them over the past years. And I think a lot of that comes from some of the culture wars that Mike was also pointing to, what men are supposed to be today versus what they actually naturally want to be. So I'm excited to see everybody's points of view on this.
Okay, thank you for being here, and we will get into the discussion as we go. And last but certainly not least, someone who so graciously agreed to be a little bit of a last-minute replacement here, so go easy on him, gang. Lawson Harrison, welcome to the show.
Hello, gentlemen.
Who are you? What are your thoughts on the topic? And we'll get into it.
My name's Lawson. I'm not a content creator or anybody. I just like to speak out about social issues. I think the Democrats are a better example of the way that men ought to behave. I don't have like a specific thing, so I'd like to kind of listen to what you guys have to say and then maybe chime in when I can. So
okay, thank you for being here. I asked this question to Lawson a few minutes ago before the show, and I'd like to ask this question to the rest of you to kind of start this off. And I'll have more questions as we go. But I guess the first question I have for the group is, if you had a son, or if you do have a son, I'm not sure everyone's family background here, who would you rather them emulate? Someone, the typical Democrat or the typical Republican? Go ahead.
Well, let's
I guess
anyone have kids?
I do have one on the way.
Go ahead.
I have one on the way, and so I've been thinking about parenting a lot. So we, my wife and I have decided to keep the gender of our child secret. So I'm not going to disclose whether it's a boy or girl, but I have thought about, before we found out, how I would raise a boy and how I would raise a girl. And so if we're talking about, I really think either the average Democrat or if we're talking about politicians, absolutely a Democrat. I do think that among average Republicans, there are good people, there are good men, right? I don't think that you're an evil person or a terrible person because you're Republican. So if we're talking about the average Democratic voter and the average Republican voter, it's closer. I mean, I still think the Democratic values are better. So I'd say the Democrat in both cases. But if we're just talking about our politicians and our leaders, absolutely, like it's not even close.
Okay. Why, I guess?
I mean, the Republican view of masculinity, and I think, Gen Z touched on this when he was talking about toxic masculinity. Republicans have, and people on the right have had this talking point that, when the left says toxic masculinity, the left is saying masculinity is toxic, which doesn't make any sense to me, because then why would you use the adjective in the first place, right? If I say this guy's a fast runner, that implies that there exists slow runners. If I say this is a delicious pizza, that implies that there are pizzas out there that are poorly made. So when people say toxic masculinity, that implies that there are forms of masculinity that are not toxic. Otherwise, it would be a redundant phrase. And so
sorry, go ahead.
I just think that the Republican leaders depict and portray the worst of toxic masculinity, where coarseness, violence, anger, and callousness is considered masculine, and things like empathy, kindness, Even sacrifice is considered effeminate, soy, gay, whatever. And I just don't share that view of masculinity.
You had something to say? Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I think to build off something Vybe said in his opening that I actually do agree with as well. I do see it as it's not really an either or proposition as far as like I think there is certainly things to draw from both ideas and both sides. Like kind of the stuff you just laid out of like there are traits that are typically associated with femininity that are good for a man to adopt. The question is, okay, where do you draw the line and where does it go too far? So I think I agree with you on that point. What I would point to though, on this idea of when the left says toxic masculinity, are they referring to just toxic traits within masculinity or just masculinity itself as being a toxic thing? What really jumped out to me recently, thinking about this question, was a town hall that AOC did with Bernie. And they asked them, how does the left do a better job appealing to young men, or why does the right do so good appealing to young men? And AOC's answer was effectively to say that the right does well with young men because they appeal to their basest instincts and basest desires. And there was no qualification. There was no like, oh, it's just the toxic side of masculinity that gets appealed to. She just said it's just base. She didn't say masculine desires, but she just said base desires, which I think you can apply the term masculine there when you're talking about men, appealing specifically to men. And so that really stood out to me as like, this is someone, and by the way, I can go ahead and lock in my prediction. I think she's going to be the nominee in 2028. Even over people like Gavin Newsom. I think she is where the core of the party is right now, and we can debate about all that. But to say something like that, to say the only reason the right does well with young men is because basically you're appealing to all these toxic traits. I think that gives the game away that there is a core belief there that masculinity in and of itself is built on oppression, domination, all the other traits you can list off based off of that. But so I don't know if you have a response or what you take away from her making a statement like that about a concept like masculinity.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that specific statement, but I'll respond to the general point, which is why Republicans appeal to young men. And like I said, it was a culture war issue where there are differences, right, between men and women, and I do think that it's easier to sell anger. It's easier to sell, this type of otherization to men, right? It's easier to make men pissed, and the right media apparatus has been very, very good at weaponizing this type of fear mongering, this type of otherizing, this type of the immigrants are out to get you. The immigrants are taking your jobs. The trans people are trying to mutilate your kids, right? And by constantly feeding that anger, right, that is more effective towards men than it is towards women, right? I think that that's something we can all agree on. And it's a short-term thing. It makes people feel good, right? Like sometimes being angry does feel good. It helps distract you from the real economic problems that we haven't gotten into yet, that I do think is the core driver of all of these problems that men are facing, whether it be the suicide rate or the loneliness epidemic or depression, etc. It distracts from all of these other very tangible economic problems and keeps young men angry. And I do think that's what AOC was probably referring to when she's talking about base instincts, which is just instead of addressing the real problems that these men are facing, the Republican media apparatus is just keeping them angry, keeping them riled up, and it's harmful to everyone in the long run.
So then, and to take it back to the election then, because obviously this is kind of this was the last major bellwether we have, and the statistics were huge. The polls are huge as far as the amount of support of young men towards the right. But remember back to before the election, though, when we get these ideas like white dudes for Harris, and even the very founding origination of the guy who founded it in his like opening statement of the big call that had all the actors on it was to basically talk about we just needed a space for white men to come together and acknowledge our role as oppressors in history. And it's like it seems like there can never simply be a conversation about an issue that is facing men generally. It always has to be couched or caveated with either you're the recipient of years or centuries of privilege and benefits, or just, once again, it's just the inherent nature to it. Like, there can never just be a straight conversation about it. And I would also point to the little brief glimpse that we did get of the left seeming to take an interest in men's issues occurred for about 3 months up until the election, and then the men voted for Trump, and then immediate pivot back to, well, it's all the men just voted right, and they went right because it's all this toxic masculinity, and Trump and MAGA, they appeal to that. So it's like all the faux appearance, or the faux appearance to care about, let's actually take the male loneliness epidemic seriously, the male suicide rate seriously, seem to just evaporate, at least among our Democratic officials and elected folks. Which, once again, just I think the core of this discussion that we're gonna have tonight is, where do young men feel more at home? And when you're treated like a token, that we're going to pander to you for purposes of winning an election. And they were openly saying this, by the way. I can pull the quotes for you guys, saying that we need to appeal to them. Yes, they're sexist. Yes, they're misogynistic, but we need to appeal to them because we need their votes, because we need to stop Trump. And then you lose, and now it's okay, immediately cast back out into the wilderness. Well, when you've got a side on the aisle, the right, that says, come in, we'll take you in, let's talk about your issues, then I don't think it's a mystery at all why the men are moving right. They feel more at home on the right.
I wanna hear a little bit from Lawson Harrison, see what he has to say. Vybe's taking care of something real quick. He'll be back in like a minute, hopefully, and then we'll get his opinion too. But I wanna hear from some of the other people on the panel. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's difficult for me to divorce the I guess the right wing leadership from the average, because you did say the average Republican and the average Democrat. Wick, is that correct?
You can take it however you like, but
Sure,
yes,
sure.
I believe I said that. Yes. But
So,
go ahead.
like a couple of years ago, I would have probably not be arguing as strong for Democrat modeling for my son. By the way, congratulations, Mike. My son is due in March, so I've been thinking about this a lot too. Yeah, I do think like the Democratic Party was hijacked by the wokies a few years back, and we're kind of seeing the consequences of that. But it's really difficult for me to divorce the leadership of the right and the average right.
Well, what do you mean by that? Like, what about the current, as you say, leadership of the right makes you think that they are worse for young men in general?
It's hard because like I don't want this to turn into just a list of all the bad shit I think Trump has done and his party. But I don't know how to address this without doing that. So let's say when Bush Jr. was president, I would not have had a strong feeling one way or the other, I don't think. So what I would like to see more is, I mentioned this in chat earlier, I wish the left had a sort of Jocko Willink that was, does everybody know who that is?
Yeah.
The Marine? Yeah, I wish the left had someone like that to talk about men's issues. We kind of had that with Joe Rogan, but we don't anymore. So I don't know. I don't know who the like spokesmen are for the men on the left.
Well, I think that's a really good point. Why do you think that is? I mean, all this talk, we need a Joe Rogan of the left. There was a Joe Rogan of the left. His name was Joe Rogan, but he's no longer a speaker, even though he's still personally, he will openly advocate and say he's more a fan of left-wing policies. I mean, he endorsed Bernie in both elections, but he no longer feels comfortable.
Yeah, totally.
Just real quick, your mic's cutting out a little bit. Attorney, I don't know if that's on my end or your end.
No, I think your mic is cutting a little bit.
Okay, so it's not just me.
The reason why the Democrats don't have this sort of unified view of what masculinity is because that's just core to lowercase l liberalism, the idea that we don't prescribe what you have to be as a man, right? You don't have to like UFC to be a man. You don't have to like sports to be a man, right? There isn't this rigid box that you have to be in. And that's just how liberals and Democrats think, right? You don't have to be a homemaker. You don't have to be a mother to be a woman. You don't have to like guns to be a man, right? So naturally, right, if that's what you as a party believe, you're not going to have sort of this unified vision of what a man is, because it can be a whole bunch of different things. So I don't think the lack of some unifying figure of masculinity is a bad thing. But I do want to respond. Okay, go on.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, but if the kind of the point we're on right now is which side is better for men, appeals better to men, just as and like core ideas. I feel like if you're not even able to get to a point where it's like we can actually have a figure who is a positive masculine role model example on the left.
Yeah, let's take a moment. What are the core ideas? Because we talk about that the Republicans are presenting, and what are the core ideas that the left are presenting that you think would be beneficial to men? If you were to pitch it, a young man comes up to you and says, "You know what? I have all these issues affecting me. Who's going to be better for me in my life? Who's going to make my life easier as a young man?" What would you tell them to sell them on the fact that the Republicans are it? What would you say, like the policies that they're presenting, the solutions to the problems that they're presenting? What are they from the Republican side? This is the AZ Attorney General guy. Yeah.
So I would say probably the biggest one, just kind of core overarching principle, is having an aspirational view of what masculinity is and the ability to, because you can branch that out into pretty much any other subcategory. So it's the ability to be a protector, to be a provider, that if you work hard and you hold yourself accountable and you focus on bettering yourself, then you should be able to reap the rewards for your labor, that you're not someone who just is an inherent beneficiary of the patriarchy, and that's why your issues don't matter that much. You're not someone who just gets all these free bonus points in society by virtue of your skin color or because of your gender. It's everyone is an individual, and on the right, I think it's like a core tenet of conservatism. When we talk about get the government less involved, get the limited government, lower taxes, run down the list of whatever conservative wish list you want to do. But the whole idea is to take the responsibility, take the accountability, put it back on yourself, and use that as motivation to become the best version of yourself that you can be. I think that's only the right is pitching that message right now, because I think I'll let them define how the left sees it, and then I can give how I think the left is coming across.
$2 from Testicle Johnson to say hashtag free top G. Thank you for the $2. And gang, remember to donate, like all that while we go, and I'll ask your questions.
But sorry, just one additional point on just to kind of add on to that. I would point to, since admittedly I may not be the best representative as far as putting it into words, but I would look to the figures who have elevated into these positions of influence, specifically among young men. And the first one to really, I think, step into that was Jordan Peterson, circa 2016, 2017. And you can go back and look at his stuff back then. It was very aspirational, and it was actually very dark, saying that life is pain, life is struggle, but you can work through it. And if you embrace that, kind of the Jocko Willink message, right? The embrace the suck. And if you do that and you embrace discipline and work hard, then you can actually become someone who is worthy of respect, worthy of admiration among your family, your coworkers. I think that is kind of the core right appeal.
And same question to the other side for the moment. If you are a young man comes up to you and says, why are the Democrats better for me? What are they going to be doing for me? How are they going to help me as a young man? How would you pitch it to them? What policies, what ideas, what different, what are they offering to young men? Go ahead.
Yeah, so to answer that question really is just to, address the what is causing all of these issues that young men face. And at its core, it's economic, right? Why are young men upset, or suicidal, right? Upset is not the right word. They have on average, right, no real economic prospects, no path towards homeownership, no foreseeable career. You've got AI coming in, threatening to take all the entry-level jobs. It kind of already is. And the Democratic answer has always been, we need to change the way we distribute wealth in this country, right? We need to change the way that we regulate corporations so that they can't, just replace everyone with AI. We need to address the housing crisis, right, through all of these levers and mechanisms that the government has. The right's answer has always been, I guess, toughen up and deal with it. And, we like you, but we're certainly not going to spend any government money or implement any regulations to help you. And so good luck, right? So if a young man asks the Democratic Party, like, what can you do for me? Men are half the country, right? Young men are like 30% of the country. If you improve the country, it'll improve the lot of young men as well. And so perhaps the Democrats don't have, oh, well, we're going to just give young men money, right? But any type of regulation or policy or goal towards reducing wealth inequality, right? Towards improving opportunities for young men who might not be born into wealth, is going to help them.
Any thoughts, Lawson?
Mike, you're killing me. I'm trying to support our side, but I heavily disagree with most of that. But
okay, give your thoughts.
With,
give your thoughts.
Yeah.
What I've asked this question earlier about what can be done about do we all agree? I know we disagree on which problem it is, but do we all agree that there are problems that people perceive are problems, but are actually not problems?
I mean, those exist, yeah.
Sure. I think both the left and the right have those. I think they're even shared with some cases. My problem with this conversation is I don't have an answer for why the left is better. I just have answers why the right is horrible. That's what I'm gonna. If I could talk to my son right now, I would say.
I understand that this is something you were brought in a little last minute. I appreciate you for coming on. And if that's what you got is why Republicans suck, give it to us, okay?
Republicans, not like the leadership, right?
No, we're talking about just in general, the right. Yeah, the leadership, all of it, from the top to the toes, okay?
Let me give me another minute, Wick, and
I'll give you another minute. Let me jump in a little bit here.
I mean, you could disagree with me too. We can.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because one of the
Democrat side.
You guys are Can I just say that you guys are also respectful towards each other? It's very, very nice, actually, given some of the debates I've had in the past. So I do appreciate that. But I'll just jump in with my thoughts here, since Vybe, again, dealing with family issues, totally understand. Those come up. When I look at the right, I see them giving young men excuses, basically. It's not your fault that you're suffering. It's the immigrants. They're taking your jobs. It's not your fault that you can't get you're lonely. Fucking women, right? Okay? That's what I hear from a large portion of the right. Okay? Not all the right. I'm not painting with like a brush that takes everyone, but you have figures that are very popular and influential on the right, such as Andrew Tate, such as most of the Red Pill, who are preaching and selling young men basically excuses. This is why it's not your fault. This is why it's the other people's fault. And I think, as Mike said earlier, just ginning up anger, just making them angry, upset, because obviously, if you're angry and you're upset and you think immigrants are taking your jobs and you think that young women are rejecting you because they're bitches and hoes, it's gonna lean you toward the right. It's gonna make you more open to right-wing suggestions and policies and things like that.
I mean, I don't think it's young men's fault, right? There's just too many of them, and this is too pervasive of a problem to say that they've earned this, right? So I do think that part of it is correct. Obviously, selling the anger and diverting that anger towards illegal immigrants, towards women, towards trans people is, in my opinion, the wrong way to address this issue. But I think step one is acknowledging that the Democrats do need to do is this, this isn't men's fault. There are all kinds of causes, right? COVID was a significant problem for everyone. Social media, the internet, right? The advent of AI, the wide accessibility and availability of porn, the advent of internet gambling, crypto being one form of gambling that people partake in. And so, like, there are all of these things that are contributing to, the young men's issues, right? I'll just
I
use
would
as a big
consider
umbrella.
I would consider a lot of what you said predators. There are people predating upon young men, right? The crypto folk,
But
right?
if I could speak on that,
yeah, please go ahead.
I think there's been a conflation here that I think we do need to keep separate, because I'm not going to deny there certainly are these actors out here. You mentioned the Red Pill, the Manosphere, the Andrew Tates of the world, but are those really voices of the right/Republicans? Because they beef all the time with what I would consider more traditional conservative Republican types. I mean, Ben Shapiro has done segment after segment talking about Andrew Tate and Fresh and Fit, and just talking about how they are not representatives of what traditional conservatism, specifically how traditional conservatism should be preaching. Good.
Yes. No, you're
masculinity.
correct that there are people on the right that I think are honest actors and good actors. I think Ben Shapiro, well, I don't know if I'd say entirely honest actor, but he's a better actor on the right than most. But there are people being like, I think that's a minority at this point. I think the majority are people like Matt Walsh, who recently said, no enemies to the right, right? And then you had the chat group, the group chat leaks, and then leaks from other group chats. I think the second group chat leak hit the building, where this is a growing kind of issue among young people on the right, is this willingness to kind of this breeding of resentment and hate. And this is, again, top down. This is coming from Trump. This is coming from the Matt Walshes, the Andrew Tates, the Tim Pools, all these figures who are basically saying there's no enemies to the right. We have to embrace groyperism. We have to embrace all these things. And it does appeal to young men, but is that a good thing for young men, right? That's the question. Go ahead.
I would categorize Andrew Tate and his type in the same bucket. I would put like the super radical gender abolish people, from the left. That's kind of the same place I would put him. Yeah.
Testicle Johnson for $5 says, Andrew Tate taught me the lover boy method. Now I have 10 girlfriends. Okay, thank you, Testicle Johnson, for the $5.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think we need to pin Andrew Tate on the right. I think if we just look at the moderate right, whatever that is, or the MAGA right, it's selling men anger, and that is not how you build anything, right? Whether it be a country, an ideology, it's just making people pissed, and that is being conflated with masculinity, right? That's just cheap opioids. And with the Democratic Party, I'll grant you that in the 2024 election, the Democratic Party played way too far into identity politics, right? Like, how do we put these people in a bucket and then cater to them as a bucket, right? Like, you can't think that way. And I think the Democratic Party is learning that you can't think that way. But the Democratic Party isn't trying to use this sort of cheap, destructive method of getting people to vote for them, which is just breeding anger and hatred, right? At least the Democratic Party is thinking about ways to build. I mean, all of the legislation that Biden passed, the Infrastructure Act, all of this was designed to try and build more things, create more jobs, build more infrastructure. And that is what would benefit young men, right? The widespread availability of jobs, of opportunity, of the ability to own a home. And these things, everything else percolates down from there, right? Whether it becomes getting married, finding a girlfriend, obviously that becomes easier if you have more economic opportunity. So, the right isn't speaking to that at all, right? It's just trying to keep people angry. And the left has always been about social programs, regulation, and finding ways to improve, finding ways to leverage the government to improve things for people.
Okay, $5, and I'll let you go in a second. $5 from the pleb to say the difference here is the average Democrat is not the woke left. But right now, the average Republican is MAGA. Look at every single Republican leader. And then $5 from Cameraman 502 to say the red pill sells the same false gospel that radical feminism and BLM sold the women in the left. Grievance and entitlement. Okay, Attorney General. I'm sorry, Gen Z Attorney. I don't know
I'll
why I
take
keep
it.
calling you the Attorney General. I apologize. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I think the criticism that all it is on the right is just fear mongering, basically nonstop and selling anger. I mean, we can talk more about the messaging that the right puts out, but I don't think that can be brought up without bringing up the flip side, which is I think the left also is constantly trafficking in anger. I mean, what has the discourse been about the last 2 months about rhetoric and what rhetoric is leading to these real world consequences, and how there are a lot of lefties out there that are fully willing and to be in very public places saying very inflammatory rhetoric that, yeah, with whatever, with fascist, Nazi, Hitler, et cetera, et cetera. But I think, though, to keep it focused in on our discussion here, think back to however many months ago it was. There was that meme that went around online, which was asking women, would you rather encounter in the woods a man or a bear? And it was like universally, maybe not universal, but maybe 80% plus of the answers women were giving, they were saying bear, because men are that scary and evil and horrible. So how are we getting to a point, how are we saying that the left isn't trafficking in anger when they've built such a negative perception of men, which, by the way, plays in my original point, which is that the left has a very serious issue with how they message to young men that makes it feel like they have no home on the left, and by default, then they're going to find a home on the right, which is maybe, when we could talk about the policies and whatnot, and all that stuff, but at least, and maybe they can disagree with people on the right and the policies on the right, but at least the right is not coming out and saying, we hate you, we'd rather run into a bear than you if we were in the woods.
So I see you slightly grinning, Wick. You've probably had a lot of discussions already about the man versus bear meme. I'll just say, number one, that's not a democratic thing, right? Like, that's not a democratic policy, or not even policy. Like, it's not something spread by Democrats. It was a meme on TikTok.
But the women, are we thinking these are traditional conservative women that are answering this question in that manner?
No, but this is I mean, maybe some women, I don't know, but this isn't a democratic
the nose ring is usually
right? This isn't a democratic. I mean, I don't think all the women preferring the bear have nose rings, but this isn't this isn't a democratic thing. So, I mean, if you want to talk about the bear versus the man thing, that's, I think, a different conversation. I mean, we could go there. It might be old news at this point, though. I'll defer to you on that, Wick. My position is that's just not that's not something the Democratic Party is doing. It's not.
Well, and I get you're really focused on the policy stuff, and I get that, and I respect that, and I definitely am down. I want to have that conversation on the policy level, but I think I'm taking it because you kind of made the point earlier, which you didn't say this outright, but I think what you were basically laying out logically was it's the politics that comes first, and then everything comes downstream. You said it percolates down from the political policy solutions. It's basically a culture is downstream from politics. I think I have more of the opposite view, which is politics is downstream from culture. And what are the messages that are going out to these average people who aren't that politically engaged? And I think this is why I do bring it up, the man versus bear, because when I look at these videos, and these are young women in big cities, they're just, man on the street type interviews. I think it's a safe bet to say that the overwhelming majority of them have left-wing just leanings about, maybe they can't even express it as like, here's the policies that make me left-wing. It's just ideas and ideologies that are far more at home on the left than they would be on the right, which is why a lot of people on the right had the issue, and it became such a big story, when saying, why are you saying you'd rather run into a bear than a man? That just seems insane.
I mean, if politics is downstream of culture, I just don't see any type of democratic. And the man versus bear thing is quite old, so it's been a while. It's been marinating for a while. There has been no proposed legislation or anything that targets men in that way, right? Like, no one is saying. I can't even imagine what kind of law you'd want to pass or what kind of rule you'd want to make, but there was no political fallout from that meme.
So $10 from Zonia to say, perhaps it's just that bears are super cute, and we go, ooh, ooh, bear. Thank you for the $10.
And that is true. Bears are cute, but I think,
make really good rugs too.
just to use that as an example, like there was no political downstream effect from that cultural phenomenon. It was a meme. People, and I think the outrage at it, that's how all memes work, right? The more upset some group of people are about a meme, the more it entrenches itself. But there was no political fallout from that.
But so are we? I mean, can we really say though there was no impact? I don't want to say at all, because I would argue that when you have a political movement that, right, my proposition here is that it believes that masculinity in and of itself is inherently toxic, and when they use the phrase toxic masculinity, it usually refers to masculinity of it in and of itself. When that's the movement that has that core belief, and we've seen that manifest through all sorts of cultural spaces. And Wick, I'm still waiting for you to reschedule our Go Woke Go Broke panel. That was, way back when.
We can do that. Don't worry, but go ahead, please.
Because that's the exact kind of when I make the point that culture or politics is downstream of culture. When it's a well accepted cultural belief, and look, and admittedly, some of my research on to get ready for tonight, I was watching some of Shoe on Head's videos because I remember watching them some months ago, where she's specifically talking about men and Democrats and their messaging to men. And I remember she had receipts for posts, videos that she was quoting to. And it was like example after example of even people on the left that are saying like, don't hate me, everybody, but I think we need to start taking men's issues a little more seriously. Followed by 1,000 reply tweets saying like, you must be a white man if you're going to say that. Men and it's, I don't know. I need to be convinced that the left does not have this aversion to just men and masculinity.
So I just don't think the left does, because men make up half this country. And so if the Democratic Party, there's just no rule or law designed to disadvantage men that I've seen the Biden administration propose or pass. Or any recent Democratic politician.
How about him saying he was going to pick a black woman for the Supreme Court? Forget the race part of it. Just say, I will pick a female Supreme Court justice.
But that's not because he hates men, right? It's because he, for whatever reason, wanted a gender balance on the court, right? If half the country is female, then, he thinks that half the court should be female in order to be a reflection of the country. Now, you can disagree with that, but that's not based on a prejudice. Again, he's not like, I don't want a man on the Supreme Court because men are stupid, or I'd rather have a bear than a man on the, like, that's not the ideology behind it. So I do agree that Democrats should, I guess, feel more comfortable talking about men's issues. But here's the thing: is if you fix men's issues, whatever that looks like, and you improve the lot of literally half of the people in this country, the country is better off for it, right? And I'm sure if you ask women, liberal women, if we could find a way to make men not do X, Y, and Z thing that you don't like, would you support that? And they would all say yes, right? Like, basically, if you're saying if there's a way we can implement policies or do some kind of messaging to level up men as a whole and improve men's place in society, whatever that means to people, would you like that? All of these women, at least these straight women trying to date men, are going to say absolutely yes. So it's not this like hatred against men that liberal women have or Democrats have. It's like, oh, well, we want to punish men. We want to keep men down. It's them feeling, at least, go on.
It would be a mistake to think that doesn't exist at all, right? There are portions, and I would consider them small portions, of the left that are incredibly hostile towards men, just in general, right? I just don't, to your point, I don't see it reflected in policy, but in the culture, there are incredible amounts of hatred towards men from certain segments of the left. Now, again, I think it's smaller than the people pushing the fear on the right, but I don't think we could say it's not there.
Yeah, so, I don't know exactly what this, like, I've obviously seen on the internet, like, people meme and joke about men. So let's try and put this in concrete terms, right? Like, what does this hatred look like? Is it women complaining that men don't help out around the house, are lazy. Like if these are the types of complaints that some portion of the population have about men, then it sounds like addressing the depression and the mental health issues that men face would prevent men from being that way. And I think everyone would be okay with that, right?
Okay, $10 from Zephyr Hash to say, question for Gen Z attorney. What does the right sell to men, accountability or victimhood? If women pick bear, accountability would be, what are you going to do? What are you doing to make women feel that way? Instead, the right made men victims.
So I think the framing of that belies the political prior that you, Mr. Zephyr Hash, are bringing to this, which is you're categorizing people into these buckets based on identity, and that's something the right just fundamentally is going to reject, and that's the reason why the bear question is actually a good slice or a good look into this issue generally, because just what you asked there, it's like you're saying if women pick bear, accountability would be, what am I doing that makes a woman feel that way? Well, look, guess what? I'm an individual. I can't point to anything that I've done in my life that would feed into that. And there's a lot of men who hear that question and they think the same thing of like, yes, are there bad people out there who do bad things? Completely. But we're making a group categorization, a group discrimination based on a group trait, which is the fact that I'm a man. And that's the issue that we on the right have with that question, and with the answer is it's why are we doing group judgments? Why are we doing group judgments when the basis of justice, and look, speaking as an attorney, and I used to be a prosecutor, criminal law, the whole point is justice. We don't do prosecutions of groups of people. We do prosecutions of individuals for individual things that were done wrong or broke the law. And so it's just, I think this actually, that was a great question. I'm glad you asked it, because I think it just gives the whole game away that in order to even have a conversation about these types of issues, your expectation, as a commenter, was that we have to all submit basically to this group sectioning off philosophy that is just so, it's completely un-American, and it really has no place at all in the American discourse.
Okay, I want to make sure that, hold on, just before you can respond. Yeah. So I do want to give you a chance to respond, but I do want to hear what Vybe has to say. He's back now, hopefully, and ready to go. And then the guy I had coming on is here, Primecayes, and so yay, and we can keep going. But yeah, so Lawson, then Vybe, then we're gonna let Prime jump in. Go ahead.
What's up, Prime? I was just, that doesn't really make sense to me, Gen Z, because like I don't know how we can talk about men's issues without kind of having the bucket that we're calling it. Like, maybe I misunderstood what you were saying.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying we can't talk about, right, we are talking about the broader scope of what are men's issues. I'm talking about specifically with a question like that, and saying that my response to it, if I was a good masculine man, I should hear a woman say that she would rather run into a bear than a man, and I should ask myself, what can I do better to avoid that to stop that from happening? Sure. And my answer to that is, it's not me. It's not something that I can do differently, because I'm not the one that you need to be scared of. If you find me in the woods, guess what? We're out here in this together. Let's survive together. And that's an answer I think most men, the overwhelming majority, like 99.99999% of men would consider themselves to be that one. But because it's this group classification based on the 0.00000 times infinity 1%, because we get these sensationalized stories in the media, about cases like this, about stories like that, where because it does happen, and it has happened to real people. But the group categorization and group identification, making individuals who would not be that have to answer for that. That's what I object to.
Okay, Vybe, what are your thoughts? Have you been listening in at all? I'm not sure if you're.
Yeah, I had my headset on half of the time.
Okay, go ahead.
I was all ready to answer your first question. Like, if I had a boy, would I want him to follow Republican or Democrat? And it goes into even to the bear at the end of this, and I'll try to make it quick. But I am a father. I have a 21-year-old and I have a 7-year-old. And my wife did say she would take him to Taekwondo today, but he had a fit right in the beginning of this thing, so I had to go help my wife take care of the boy. But given that, which side would I pick for the boy? Well, I pick neither side. I want him to emulate me. And I come from a Christian right side. So I try to emulate Christ and I try to do everything the best I can. And I know that my children's eyes are on me. So I try to be an example of what's good. And that comes from Christ. Now, I know that there are Christians that are also Democrats. There's probably more Republicans that are Democrats. So ultimately, I would say if you're Christian, right, and you're on you're a Democrat side, I want you to follow that father, even if he's a Democrat. So I don't. This is kind of where I was like, you know, which is better when it comes to like who the better parent is. I think both of our philosophies. I think one's a little bit more feminine on one side, and the other side's a little bit more masculine. And I think both of them are needed to raise children correctly. But if we really want to get to the crux of the conversation, right, and it is men's mental health. That's the number one issue. Housing, obviously, jobs, obviously, I heard some of those hit on. But the number one is the mental health crisis, and it's expanding for men, and it's not for women. So this is not just a young people issue. This is a male issue. Now, one of my things that I kind of feel like happened with the bear is that I grew up hunting. I grew up actually in football and gymnastics. So the one's very masculine sport, the other one is very strong sport. These are all masculine things. Like I know how to gut a deer. I think these are good things for men to know how to do. But I think somewhere along the line, and I feel like it came from the left and with feminism, everybody was telling men that they have to endorse their feelings. They're not supposed to be rolling around and wrestling. They're not supposed to be hunting. They're supposed to be crying when they kill a little rabbit. And all the women being told this are now looking at the men being a natural man and go, wow, I didn't realize how scary men are. Like they were told we were scary. But back in the day when we were all hunting and taking care of our families, you know that every woman would have said, I'd rather be in the woods with a man than a bear, when they actually knew what wild is. So, I mean, some of these things, that's what worries me, that like being a good Christian, being a masculine Christian, but who cares about his neighbor, somehow I am now like toxic. And I was just helping my wife. So I don't think that's very toxic. I put her before this program.
Toxic to
So
me.
yeah, I mean, that's kind of my first thoughts on that.
No, okay. $20 from Zonia, and then we're going to hear from Prime. Says, I think it's also important to point out that the women answering bear aren't being honest. Of course they'd rather a man than a bear. The bear is an intentionally rage-baiting hyperbolic answer. We all recognize that, right? Thank you for the $20. And Prime, what are your thoughts here? I know you're just jumping in, but welcome to the show.
Well, first of all, thank you, Wick, for being so kind as to invite me. Sorry, things got conflicted, pointlessly, honestly. It would have been better use of time to be here, actually. But even for just a short amount of time I've been here, oh boy, you've already given me some material to work with. This bear situation, I won't spend too much time on it, but it seemed like our friend GenZattorney, hello, hi, nice to see you again.
Hello.
Hope you're doing well. Implied that the amount of men that women should be afraid of is 0.00001% of men, right? And that's only ones to be wary of. That's ridiculous, plainly so, right? I mean, I hope we can all recognize that in terms of the rates of sexual assault. Looking it up, what I've seen is, and this is just a quick look up. If someone has better numbers, then please hit me up with that. In one survey, it's 6 to 14% of men can commit sexual assault. Another estimate is 5 to 10% of men engage in sexual assault. And like that's like the criminalized kind, right? There's also all the ways that men can make a woman feel unsafe. That just isn't criminal, right? Like it's just a thing that happens. It's really unfortunate, but it's not that doesn't get counted. So okay, we can understand that women they have a reason to be afraid. The numbers are still with them, that they've got a person that they meet in the forest will probably be fine. But the whole point of that metaphor is to make a statement, right? A statement about how women just in general go through life feeling very much unsafe, right? And for reasonable reasons. All right, so moving on past that to the topic at hand. When we're talking about what one side has to offer, right? Well, I won't say Democrat or Republicans. I think Democrats Democrats don't have much to offer anyone. They're pretty shitty. But if we're talking about a left versus right, the left, sure, of course, has more to offer young men, right? Because the left is worried about labor rights, right? Like the left is worried about making sure these individuals get jobs, and within those jobs are well paid and they're protected from the abuses of capital. Right, like that is a bread and butter issue. The left wants to make sure that those men have access to a college education, that you can actually afford to go to a college education, except being left to the tender mercies of the private lending market, right? That's what the left wants to do. The left wants to make sure that you have health care that you can either afford or, if you're a leftist like me, right, completely free. We want to make sure you are employed, that you are educated, and that you are healthy, right? These are the things holding men back, right? And beyond that, we want to even build out cities with green spaces, with third places. We want to build walkable cities that encourage community so that you can meet people. These are the things that the left wants, and what does the right have to offer? Absolutely nothing. They have moral panics, right? About feminism. Now it means men want to cry and or when they touch a rabbit, right? Like feminism means that I guess I'm toxic because I hung out with my wife. Like what the fuck? Just like straw men all around. Right? No, the left has, honest to God, policies that address the issues of men. So there you go.
So I think we need to see if we all agree on a couple things, just on facts.
Well, could I respond to what Vybe was saying? Because I think this is actually quite important. Where I think it's emblematic of the left and the right living in different realities. So Vybe, you had said that helping your neighbor was a Republican masculine value. Is that right?
No, I actually said it's a Christian value, and I said that there are Christian left and Christian right, right? So, and that part of that, like when I said, who would I want my son to emulate, a Republican or a Democrat? I said, a man that follows Christ, right? I don't care if he's on the left or the right.
So I'm also Christian, although I suspect we disagree theologically on a lot of things. But I agree with you that masculinity does mean, one of the things in masculinity is this selfless ability to protect others, to help your neighbor, and particularly people who are less fortunate than you. And I feel like that is very consistent among Democrats or the left, whatever. Whereas on the right, it's very much about individuality, right? Like you can help your neighbor if you want to, but you certainly don't have to. And it's kind of effeminate to care too much about illegal immigrants, right? So I just don't see how the Republican Party or the right connects with the Christian view of masculinity, which is quite self-sacrificial, quite giving, quite empathetic, and quite merciful and generous. So could you square that for me?
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is kind of my problem. Like, I don't go to church just on Sunday, right? I'm very active all through the week. We do lots of programs, and we have, for men struggling, things like that. We reach out and we feed more people than our local government's capable of. We're helping more with mental health quicker and better than the government, right? So when I look at left and right, I see the left Christians also wanting to do the same thing I'm doing. We just have different methods for how we want to do it. I'd like to see the government out of it less because I think they're not efficient at it. I think they're too easy to scam. I think there's a lot of problems with the bureaucracy of the government. But I think what you and I want is the same thing. I just rather see my neighborhoods doing it, my church is doing it. You don't have to be a church to be a local community helping people. You can be a secularist and a group of secularists actually doing that. So I'm not saying that only Christians do this, but I would like to see, I think when we do it locally and actively, and my church is actually in multiple countries, so we're doing more than we're doing it locally, nationally. I feel like that's a better prescription than putting our money into the government and seeing all the different layers where tons of money is taken out through all different bureaucracies and things like that. That's where I see the difference.
Okay, Attorney General had something to say, and
just to build on that, like it's been pretty consistently proven through polls and surveys that the right generally gives more in charity pretty much every year. Like it's just a statistical phenomenon, and a lot of that is in large part due to religious giving. That's included in the charitable giving, but it kind of goes to your point that you're asking, like, well, how is that a right wing trait to help your neighbor? And I think it is incorporated into the right wing, into the traditional conservative, which do say, I think what you missed there was you're saying, well, it's kind of an individualistic libertarian, like you don't have to. No. What the answer is, we're just saying you should, as a moral thing, you should do it. We just don't believe the government should compel you to do it, and that's a big difference than just saying, oh, it's just kind of to each their own.
So I can buy that. Like, I'm not going to dispute you on the fact on whether the left or the right donates more to charity. I'm sure there are tons of very generous and very giving Republicans, people who are members of a church who, do food banks and all kinds of charitable work. But on the Democrat side, like, there are certain projects and certain goals that can only be achieved through some type of collective action. And so, and as the world grows more complex, the population grows larger, and as America's a big country. Why this resistance towards, at least conceptually, maybe you could say the Democrats are corrupt or the government is bureaucratic or whatever, but conceptually, there being this institution that can effectively leverage, that's greater than the sum of its parts, to leverage this type of giving and this type of care for society that ultimately also benefits everyone.
So I think I want to bring the conversation back just to kind of get back to core masculinity and which side, right versus left, kind of the views on masculinity. Because when I look and see how does the left view masculinity, I came across article after article after article stating things like how gym culture is an aspect of toxic masculinity, how toxic masculinity is contributing to climate change, how actually, let me get the list pulled up. And
I ask a clarifying, we're talking about Democrats or like the far left? I just want to make crystal clear.
So
I'd
have to pull the original articles themselves. I'm saying I got a compilation from a Jonathan Haidt video, who's not an overtly political figure. So he's not, in his body of work, he's consistently, he's not pushing an agenda, I would say. Sure. But the headlines I've got, and I just screenshot them on my phone, was how toxic masculinity driving gun violence, toxic masculinity driving prison culture. Science says toxic masculinity more than alcohol leads to sexual assault. Toxic masculinity is bad for the planet, according to research. Did bros cause the financial crisis? Hegemonic masculinity in The Big Short. It goes on and on and on, and it's gym culture. It's being fit.
Could you help us understand what the point of all this is? Right? You know what else I can find? I can find a list of articles blaming millennials for the fall of Western society. Right? Like, yes, they put articles out saying with clickbait titles saying that this group, right, is causing everything to go wrong. Right? And if I go to New York Post, I'll see a different groups listed. Right? Specifically like undocumented immigrants. Right? And if I go to the left, right, well then yes, you'll find, or left-leaning news sites. You might find something that talks about toxic masculinity, right? You might talk about something about like ICE or whatever, right? Like we have our boogeymans, we write articles about that. Like, how does that tell us which of these sites have better policies for these for men?
Before you answer that, I want to make a little money, and then I'm going to give the mic directly to you after. $20 from Schwengo saying, "Here it is. I am on the left. But the left doesn't reward or revere chivalry, honorable, and justifiable/legal violence. It doesn't take men's issues seriously. Yes, women have more difficult lives, but there is contempt that is cringe." And then $5 from the pleb to say Republicans are more charitable, but also cut funding for SNAP, healthcare, USAID, and scientific research. Let's just leave that up to the individuals, ? Okay? Attorney, Gen Z attorney?
Yeah.
Mike is yours, sorry.
I think so. So you asked me, why does that? Well, basically, what does that matter? Why is that relevant? All these coverage and articles and think pieces pontificating on how all very simple, core aspects of living a normal and or successful life. Something like going to the gym. Something like, I saw another one that said why beards are sexist. When basically, yeah, and Wick, you sexist monster. My gosh.
True. Go ahead.
my point that I'm making here is when these are not articles that are coming from the right. And so if the question we're asking here is the right or the left more open and more willing to foster masculine success and masculine flourishing? And the right is saying, come over here and we'll give you an aspirational vision and tell you how you can be a protector and a provider, and being a good man is someone who's not just mean and aggressive and dominating, but someone who can take care of other people, up to and including your neighbor, like we were just talking about earlier. When that's the message that you get on the traditional conservative right versus the progressive left, which we just got, Schwengo, points for honesty here, talking about how the left does have an issue with appealing to young men. And it's not just me saying this. Look at the young men. What are the young men saying? Take the totality of the information of all the men who get to vote and which direction are they trending. And I think that just speaks for itself that the left has an issue here. And y'all seem to not want it. Y'all seem to be denying that.
But attorney,
So
what
without a
percentage
doubt,
of
there is-
Democrats do you
let's go
think would
Harrison
agree
and-
that
Harrison
beards
and
are
Paul.
sexist? I'm curious.
No, okay. On specific points,
Yeah,
certainly.
exactly.
Okay, yes, but we're talking about what is the vision that is being cast here. And a vision is not just based on any one individual article. It's on the totality of when I look to the left and I'm consistently seeing things like that versus I'm seeing not that from the right. I'm seeing a welcoming environment that's trying to teach you to be a better person, to be a protector, to provider, et cetera, Like, that's the difference here.
Yeah, but you found it because you were looking
how is
for
the
it.
right?
Is my
Yeah,
point.
how is the right
So-
teaching
well, hold on,
people
hold
to
on,
be
hold on.
protectors?
But I want to get back to this. Like, so one again, did millennials destroy America? Right, that body of article, very large body of literary work, right? Was that describing a real problem, or was it describing nonsense? Right, like, okay, so you have a body of articles that say, toxic masculinity has ruined all parts of society. Right, is that actually true? Like, whatever, right? Okay, and just because there's a body of articles on the right doesn't mean that is and describes like the thoughts and attitudes of the general conservative population, right? Like, it's just the thing that you do for clickbait. So I don't think that actually means anything. So I think we toss that away. But in terms of like, you're saying, hey, what the right is offering you is teach you how to be a protector, right? How to be a provider. Well, how do you be a provider in this society, right? That means having a job. Like, which side is focused on protecting individuals, making sure that when they go to work, they're well paid, right? Not just whatever a capitalist can get away with, right? That they aren't abused, that they they are healthy, right? Which one is providing those policies that actually can empower men? Now, I will give you that at this moment in time, I think you are correct in that, like, young men, right? Just broadly, if we use that, it's a very broad category here, right? Doing a lot of work for us. But I will say that young men are trending conservative. That's absolutely the case, right? And if you're saying, hey, isn't that a signal that the left is having trouble speaking to young men? Absolutely. I think my side needs work on that, right? Certainly, it's the case. But in terms of actually providing something, right? When you come to each side and you actually listen to the policies given, right? Which one is actually giving them something tangible, meaningful, and legally backed, right? To make sure their lives are better. And that's absolutely the left.
$10 from Alexander Rind, and I'll let someone respond. It seems obvious that local organizations are better equipped to understand the needs of the local poor. However, local organizations often do not have the reach of the federal government. Thank you for the $10. To that point, and then I'll give the mic to Vybe if he wants to respond and things like that. There was a recent article by Helen Andrews called "The Great Feminization," where she argues in her article here, her essay, that women are causing the downfall of civilization, especially in regards to law. Like, the fact that there are more women lawyers is causing the downfall of civilization. Would it be fair to argue then that the right hates women?
Is that for me or for Vi?
For anyone who wants to answer it, because I found that it's an article. It's been talked about quite extensively.
I mean,
The New York
you
Times
found
did
an
a
article,
response
so it must
piece,
be the case,
right?
Yeah, no, obviously using Gen Z's thought process, it must be the case that the right hates women. I mean, you'd agree, right? I mean, there's lots of articles talking about how feminists are bad and feminists tend to be women, right? And so that would imply that, I mean, they have a problem with like women, right?
But what takes? So tell me though, what takes what's exhibiting the cultural dominance right now? When you take Hollywood, when you take the media, when you take movies, you take TV, and when the fact that you can watch a TV show, you can watch a movie, and you've got your cast of characters, and you can usually pick out if there might be one competent, strong white male character, and then you can predict that they're going to be the twist villain. That happened with Rings of Power season 1. There was one.
You serious? The white men are being oppressed in Hollywood, right? There are no strong white male leads left in Hollywood. It
Brian,
doesn't
you
exist
don't know our
anymore.
struggles,
Well,
okay?
This is embarrassing. Yeah, barely. Yeah, like you're a rare, you're an extinct animal there in Hollywood, right? The strong white male doesn't exist.
This goes
anymore.
into what I was saying earlier.
Moral panicking.
This goes into what I was saying earlier. Was there are perceived issues that aren't actually real. And I would bring up several that probably everyone in this panel would disagree with at some point. I don't think the deep state is preventing young men from getting jobs in houses. I don't think the economy is doing that either, as both sides like to say.
I'm just. I want to bring it back.
I'll address your Gen Z. I'll address your term a little bit more substantively. Like I'm on Netflix right now. I hate this stupid ass autoplay. I'm looking at the top 10 TV shows in the US today. Number 1, Mob War. Okay, that's about the mob. Number 2, The Diplomat. I mean, I haven't watched this show. I see white men and white women. Love is Blind. Okay, that's reality TV. The Monster. Like, okay, Boots, Monster. These are all white men on the cover.
I'm saying,
and they can't all be villains, right?
So, well, I don't know. I'm not familiar with any of those shows. What stuck out to me that I saw recently that I was like, yeah, this is getting ridiculous. It was 4 screenshots from 4 different shows that were medieval fantasy shows. I think it was Rings of Power, it was The Witcher, it was Wheel of Time, and it was something else. And it was
The Witcher has a male white lead.
I'm talking, but yeah, is that why Henry Cavill had to leave? Because they were super respectful to the lore.
Well, they had a disagreement about the lore. He wasn't asked to leave because he's a white man, and they're like, we want a black man instead.
And they replaced with another white man.
They sidelined the main character of the Polish show for all the female characters.
It has nothing to do with his whiteness.
I'm not talking about race.
There's sex appeal. Yeah, okay. They put on the hot women on the show. Like, I don't.
Do you think
that's always been the
it?
Case, right?
They're not doing sex appeal though. They're doing. We have to have the strong, stoic girl boss who's going to be the lead. You could take it through Star Wars. You can take it through Marvel. You can take it through any of these major brands, and you could just hand wave it away or think it doesn't exist.
What's the latest Marvel movie? Like, I haven't watched Marvel.
Yeah, that was the Fantastic Four with Pedro Pascal, right? And there was. Pedro Pascal, who I don't know, you might depends on who you are. You might call him white or not, right? And then the guy who played the Human Torch, white, right? The guy who played the Thing, white, but he was.
We're not doing race,
right? And you all remember, of course, Game of Thrones.
You brought up white male.
Like, you all remember? Hold on, just real quick. You all remember Game of Thrones, right? Where the twist plot villain at the end happened to be a woman, a white woman. Right? Like,
no, Game of Thrones.
What are we talking about?
Game of Thrones is one of the few.
Men were men.
Grievance is quite manufactured. I think you have to admit, Gen Z, like, if we just look at the last couple Marvel movies, I mean, and I'm certainly not complaining, right? But like the Avengers, I mean, I don't even know what the present day Avengers are, but like
that kind of goes to the point because Captain America, he initially they tried to make Captain Carter a thing, but that was so completely unpopular. So now they're doing Falcon as Captain America. Iron Man, they had a brief stint where they were going to have, now they've got Iron Heart. She's the female Iron Man now. Thor had a brief stint of female Thor that came in. She-Hulk was there to replace the Hulk. Hawkeye retired for young female Hawkeye, played by Haley Steinfeld. And who's the sixth one? Black Widow, replaced by her sister. Literally all 6 of the main Avengers either have a permanent female replacement or at least had a temporary one, and now there is no replacement. Like,
so Captain America was replaced by a man.
So I'm saying they tried to make Captain Carter a thing, Peggy Carter, the woman, the
What
British
about Spider-Man? Isn't Spider-Man like the new leader of the Avengers or something? Tom
No,
Holland?
he's supposed to be off in his
Okay,
own.
I want to get off the media stuff.
Why are we entertaining this? This is crazy.
Yeah, I want to get off the media stuff for a
let me
minute.
summarize the point, and we can move on then.
Yeah,
Because
summarize the point, and then yeah, we'll.
The whole reason I brought it up is because when we're talking about what cultural space, what is the prevailing predominant ideology of these cultural spaces, like Hollywood, and this is why Hollywood is so important, because it's the stories that we tell that define our generations. When you look back at the stories of past decades, it's stories of not even just
white men in front, the way it should be.
It's
Agreed.
traditional
No,
masculinity. It's also traditional femininity. It's stuff. It's stories that are timeless. And this is not just about men versus women.
Timeless when white men are in charge. No, I agree.
Forget white.
Let him go. Let Gen Z go, please. Yeah.
Yeah. Forget the white part of it. You could take it all the way back to these iconic franchises of like the 70s, like Star Wars. Guess what? 3 main characters, one of them's a woman, and for some reason all the Star Wars fans are supposed to be super sexist. Apparently, the reason I'm bringing any of this up is because the stories that are told define who we are as a people, and movies and TV those are the stories that get told. That's what we export to the world, right? And look at the last 5 to 10 years. I think one of y'all even said earlier, it was you, Lawson. You said a couple years ago there was kind of this wokes took over the movement for a little bit. I would argue that we're still in that. You can look at where the core of the Democratic Party is right now and where it is moving, where it's trending. Like, you guys are just trying to hand wave this away and say, well, what's the policy? What's the policy? I understand the policy matters, but guess what? The culture matters too. And all I've got so far is just hand waving away.
Okay, before I let anyone else...
I'm just to back him up a little bit there.
Yeah, in a second, Vybe. I'm going to give you the mic in 1 second. $10 from Zephyr Hash to say, can a local charity stop Elon from taking $50 billion reward off the back of laborers and engineers at his factory? That money could provide shelters to thousands of homeless men. Can local charities match it? And then Zephyr Hash for $2 says, sounds a lot like victimhood selling to me. Vybe, the mic's yours. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not a movie expert, and I don't, I don't care if it's a strong female or a strong black man or a strong white man. If it's entertaining, it's entertaining. But we definitely know that Hollywood definitely is a lot more liberal and left, and we have seen them push that agenda harder than right agendas. Right? It's not a deep state. It's not something they're hiding. It's something they're obviously putting in there. When you see a disproportionate amount of trans characters in TV shows and movies and things like that, than what's in real life and in the amount of shows, right? Not a big deal. It's very obvious that they're trying to normalize that. We even see it in some of the shows, like what's the one with the soups, the heroes? I think like V or something, Gen V.
Yeah, Gen V.
It's a complete attack on Christianity. I mean, it's very obvious, right? They're just like attacking Christianity hardcore. You wouldn't agree with that?
Why?
Have you seen it?
I don't. I watch Gen V. I'm a
I've
Christian.
watched
I don't view it as an attack on Christianity. Go on, Prime.
Yeah.
But I'll say no, I don't.
Oh, sorry.
Like, you gotta watch it again. But,
no,
I mean, overall, I don't think...
Hold on, one at a time. We can't hear you when 3 people are talking. $10 from Alexander Rinn to say, I believe it is clear that there's a trend of women and minorities as heroes and leaders in movies. There's no reason to deny this, and it is indicative of the culture at play in Hollywood. Thank you for the $10. Prime, then yeah, we'll start with Prime. Go ahead.
All right. Sorry, Vybe. I don't mean to talk over you. I apologies. But just to quickly respond, like and I would love to hear your answer. I don't understand this, right? Like, I don't know how you saw Gen V, right? And I have seen, I've watched it, kept up with it. I haven't seen the latest episode, but like, I like it a lot. So I'm familiar with the character you're talking about. And I don't understand how you look at that, right? That character existing, and that means like that's an attack on Christians, right? Like an your middle finger to Christianity. I would love for you to expand that on it for us, please.
I mean, they had the scenes with like with the Starlight or whatever, and going to their schools. And I'm not an expert on any of these things. Like, I don't really remember. I just remember going, yeah, that's a pretty obvious slam. Like, it's pretty obvious on that. And I saw it here and there, right? I could go back and try to find it, and I think if you saw it, you would be like,
yeah, just to be clear, just real quick,
to help him out.
Just to be clear, I think I will back Vybe up, and I will say that Gen V, The Boys, all these shows, they do attack what I would consider mega churches, right? This type
Yeah.
of a certain
I was going to bring that
brand
up, right?
of Christianity,
Yeah,
which
and the boys,
I feel
this
I feel
wasn't-
just isn't
wasn't
Christian
Gen Z.
at all. But that's me.
Okay,
right?
okay, like I said,
It
I'm not
wasn't-
an expert on
it
these
wasn't Gen Z,
movies.
It was the boys. No, it's not a
It could've
movie.
been
It's a
The
TV
Boys.
show.
Yeah.
It was the boys, right? And they had a more of a meta commentary on like the mega church culture, right?
Yeah.
And in there, right, you had individuals who are using religion, right, to gain a lot of money. But wait a minute, hold on. But let's examine that just for a quick second, even though we're way off topic here, right?
Yeah,
I
Yeah,
think
it's a little bit of a aside,
but just very quickly, right? Right, like you being like a Christian, right? Like you understand probably better than the rest of us that there are mega church like pastors or preachers or whatever, right? Who do take advantage of their flock, right? Who do use them as money making machines, right? Like we know, like we have what was it? The sect, the prosperity gospel, right? That's a thing. That's a thing in America, right? Give us more money for you to become more righteous. That's crazy, right? So you would understand that this doesn't come out of nowhere, right?
Right, but it is. So I mean, I want to answer, but I don't want to answer because I want to bring it back to topic, and I'm worried if I answer, we're going to go off topic.
You can answer,
talk
then
about
I'll have a circuit breaker with a super chat or two, hopefully 3, if you guys hear me, and then we'll move it back to the topic at hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, because to me, sometimes it all depends on the viewer that's watching right now. Maybe some of us are looking at that and like, I didn't get pissed off about it. I just saw it. When I watch South Park, right? If a 10-year-old watches it, he's going to take a lot of that stuff literally, which will actually be incorrect, versus an adult watching it going, wow, he's actually mocking that, right? And so when I see those big pushes out there, I'm looking at how the average person might see something like that. And I go, yeah, the average person might not make that assumption that I obviously looked at it as a big church, but I didn't see anything in any episodes talking about how, like, countering that, right? So your average person just enjoying that, they're just going to take it in as, yeah, church sucks.
So
right?
first of all, 10-year-olds should not be watching any of these shows. If you're
I
watching,
agree.
if you're watching my show and you're 10 years old, click off. This isn't content for you. You're not. There's other shows that you should be watching.
10-year-olds should be watching my channel. That's fine. You can come over.
Okay, if you want to do that. Super chats. Okay. $10 from Alexander Rin to say, however, it is frustrating to hear from the capitalists that the movie industry cares more about ideology than about their profits. If it sells, they're going to pursue it. Thank you for the $10. Now back to the topic at hand. I want to kind of rein us in a little bit. We talked a little bit about manufactured outrage, and I think this plays into it. But when it comes to young men in general who are trending conservative, what do you think what should your side be doing? So for the people on the right, what could your side be doing better to help young men that they're not? And for the people on the left, same question. What should your side be doing that they're currently not to help young men better? And that's how I want to proceed from here. I want to give it first we'll just go around, starting with GenZattorney, and then we'll just kind of go around. Go ahead.
So I think this does get us into more of the policy discussion now, which is where I was happy to get to this point. I just thought the culture stuff was really important for us to start with, because once again, my view, politics is downstream of culture. Most people are not politically plugged in, but everyone is culturally plugged in. And so that's why the cultural messages matter. Getting to the policy perspectives, gosh, there's the whole laundry list of, you can just give the conservative wish list of, okay, let's reduce taxes. Allow people to keep more of their own money, to be able to do more with and better themselves that way. Let's do federalism. Let's move power away from Washington, D.C., move it back into states and localities, municipalities, to give people more of a say in how their actual local community gets run. I could give the whole wish list. I'm more interested in hearing what my friends on the left have to say, since I think at this point, based on the trend, the men moving right, the burden of proof is on the left to say, what do we need to change to get them back? Because obviously what the right is doing is working. So So if you want to change something, it's going to be on the left to figure out where they're going wrong and how they're going to fix it.
And just to be clear, though,
Can I
the
go
topic
next,
isn't who appeals more to young men, the right or the left. It's who is better for young men, the right or the left, which is, I think, fundamentally different. But go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. The right does appeal more to men, but from my perspective, that's because they are lying to them and feeding them outrage. But I actually have to go, Wick. So I just want to go
Thank you
next.
for filling in.
I have to cook dinner for my wife. So
soy. Okay, no, thank you.
Extremely
Give her a kiss for
sexist,
me, okay?
disgusting. Don't like it. Right? Fall of America, right there. Anti-Christian, even.
I'm
No,
just
thank-
filling in for you a little bit, Prime.
Yeah. Thank you, Lawson, for being here. Really appreciate you, brother. Much
Sure.
love.
Gentlemen,
And congratulations.
have a good evening.
Right?
Thank you,
Thank you.
Lawson.
Yeah. Okay, Mike.
Yeah, I do think that the right or the left, where the left could do better is cultural, not policy. I think that the left could definitely do better, first of all, acknowledging young men's issues. That's obviously step one. And step two, just messaging to young men that the existing democratic policies are going to benefit them. And not in an identity politics way, like here's what we're going to do for young white men or young black men, but that here's what we're going to do for the country, which, to you, young man, or whatever, is going to be beneficial. So I think that the left's improvement should be messaging and not even a cultural thing, but really it's just about rhetoric.
So messaging in general. Okay. Prime, what do you think?
So I'll dovetail off of Mike. Hello, hi, nice to meet you. What they said. Yeah, I think some of these issues have not been acknowledged on the left, right? Like, and I'll give you something more concrete. On college campuses, what I've heard, and I've heard this, a little bit, that, they have like different like programs to address, right, like marginalized groups, to make sure that they can fit in, and to integrate to the college, and then just be as successful as possible. Like But we've known that men in general, across the board, across races, have had issues like, making it in college recently, right? Like, the men, one, enrolling, and two, like finishing a 4-year college degree, the percentage has been shrinking, right? And so people have said, well, why don't we address that directly? But then that's gotten a lot of pushback. Like, well, no, we don't do that here, right? That's somehow looked at as sexist. That's the problem. Right? If something like that, when we have a group, no matter what that group is, right, we should be able to address them in a very direct manner. And to say that we can't do that with men, that's pretty messed up, right? Another one is that even just the focus on college degrees, right, rather than focusing on vocational schools, because not everyone has to get a college degree. And this oftentimes, I think this would a focus on the vocations would disproportionately help men, right? So disproportionately help them get them on their feet and become the providers they'd like to be, right? And then finally, yes, in terms of I guess the cultural messaging, I think we have failed there clearly. That we tell men that culture has changed, and that the way we interact with each other, with women, is different, right? And you've got to follow these new rules. But it's kind of difficult for a young guy to figure out what that is, right? People are looking for role models, and I'm not sure if the left has actually been providing them those strong male role models to say, okay, well, this is what they're asserting, right? And I don't think it necessarily has to be like a leftist man, right? More or less just like a role model who shows them how to interact with a new, more equality focused world. I'm not sure the term I want to use here, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be teaching them about fighting for the proletariat. It doesn't have to be involved. But I think the left, whatever that is, the left hasn't done a good enough job providing that, and so we've left the room open for charlatans like Andrew Tate on the right.
Okay, thank you. And if you guys are looking for a strong sexy male role model, look no further than Wick TV. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I am
I
the
will
solution.
say,
Okay. Go ahead.
in my opinion, one of the best male role models is Mr. Rogers, and he has been repeatedly trying to be, or Republicans have continually tried to defund his show, and have currently succeeded in doing so. At least the channel that his show is on. But there's one role model that I think the left.
Well, I
let's
want
give
to
it
focus
to
on
well,
that.
well, let's let Vybe answer the question before
Okay.
we
On
get
Christian,
too
too.
much into that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I keep on trying to. I feel like the prompt is just way too big because I can just go off in so many different tangents on a single thought that doesn't make sense unless I have all of them together. But to what Prime was like kind of mentioning, vocational jobs, this is something that I also would agree with. I know that on the Democrat side, they did a global apprentice program. The Republicans actually are pushing more apprentice jobs, or no, sorry, not apprentice jobs, vocational work. We're doing that a little bit better on our side. It's the apprentice is they kind of line up two different processes. One's more state, the other one's more national, right? We lined up on 988, which is nice that, we're both supporting that program, but only 12 to 13% of men, from what I read, would ever even call that line. And by the time they get to that point, it's way too late in their life. And this actually, I think, goes to big points of having that support system for men. There's lots of places we can put that support system. We don't really have it in the elementary schools. We don't have, high-end psychologists that actually can see when a man's struggling early, right? I don't think we have it very good in the colleges. And that's another point. I think the left actually, with you guys wanting to give college to everybody for a much cheaper price and forgive the loans, I'm kind of like, maybe we need to actually stop telling everybody they need to go to college and really start focusing on vocational so that a man can, because a roofer can make more money than a computer programmer 2 years out of high school than a guy that has $200,000 in debt 4 years out of college that probably didn't even need to go to the 4 years to do the programming he's doing anyways. I would take some of the premise away from the colleges. But one of the things, and when I go back to the Christian part, for people that don't, we have support groups, right? We have these young men coming into our church, and we have tons of mentors, watching and talking and really personal with them. And I feel like people that are in the secular side don't have those support groups. They might say like, oh, well, they go to wrestling club, they go to chess club, they go to a book club, but they're not meant to have that male support. Somehow, I think the left needs to figure out, and I know there are left Christians, but there are a lot less. And I think they need to find that hole where these men get lost, the 12 to 13% that do make the phone call to 988. Somewhere they got lost before there, and we needed to get in earlier, right? I would look at the employers. The quicker we get them employed, back in the day when my dad was working, the insurance was awesome. Like, employers gave really good insurance. Nowadays, they don't. I do believe in a basic income or global healthcare, but I believe that for anything above basic, we really should put the responsibility on the owners of businesses and give them the benefits to give the best, care, watch for the psychology of their employees and things like that. So, like I said, it's a lot to unpack, and you can go on so many different tangents on each of those individual things. But I think our hearts are on the right spot. Just how do we do it?
I want to talk.
I would agree. Can I agree?
Yeah,
from,
you
just
agree. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, done. But I would say one that your point on the vocational schools, actually there is no disagreement. And in terms of a broader left policy, right? It's not just free college, right? It's actually also free vocational school. We want people to be empowered to be able to go to whatever career they want, right? We want to take down those barriers, right? So whether it be the college track or the vocational track, right? Like the left would like to make sure that they're not coming into it with like a massive amount of debt. But secondly, yes, I would agree with you on the lack of secular support groups. Like, I think you're completely right that within the Christian framework, you just have it like built out. You can go to the church itself, right? You can go to the sermons, right? But you can also go to like these different groups, like not on Sunday, right? All times of the day, and you get support. You can call the pastor, right? You're having a hard time, meet up the pastor, and he'll be a counselor for you. Like, that's like amazing. And on like the secular left, we haven't done anything like that. I don't see anything coming like that on the horizon. So in that case, yes, I will give ground to our friends on the right.
So I do want to say to the point that Vybe was talking about, how a lot of, especially Christian churches and other organizations, have a large amount of supposed support for young men. Growing up Mormon, right, which is Christian in my opinion, right? We had youth groups and all these things. But when you look at the suicide rates for young men in particular, they're highest in the whole country in Utah. And they're pretty high in a lot of these red Christian Bible Belt type of states. They're pretty up there. So whatever you guys are doing, it doesn't seem to be working.
So I wanna kind of center the discussion, because obviously we can do the whole wish list, but I think education is kind of what we're already on, and I think that's probably where the bulk of, if we're talking about young men in particular, how you get ahead in life. Yeah, education is really going to be the lion's share of that topic. So then the question becomes, okay, who's better on education than the right versus the left? And I would point, I don't know if any of y'all have heard of, it's called the Mississippi Miracle. It's a recent phenomenon, the new name for it. Basically, Mississippi over the course of the last 15 years has gone from 49th in the country in education to, in some metrics, first overall. And let me pull it up actually, so I'm speaking correctly. Yes, as of 2023, state ranks among top 20 for fourth grade reading, a significant leap from 49th place ranking in 2013. And the core, it really boils down to just a couple policy changes that were made in elementary school in Mississippi. One was changing the way you teach reading, doing more of a phonics based, and actually training teachers to do that and investing in that. The other was actually making that if you can't read at grade level in fourth grade, guess what? You're getting held back. Like, we used to have that in the country, but it's been more of a left-wing initiative to move away from that. And the reason why I'm attributing this to the left is not keeping up with these kinds of adjustments is, almost a near identical bill was proposed in California to model the Mississippi Miracle, the same policy changes. The California Teachers Union, they stepped in and they killed the bill. And despite spending one of the largest spending per pupil per capita, California is not performing. Pretty much every state actually has declined, especially with COVID. The only state that has actually improved is Mississippi. And so you can look at any jurisdiction across the country, whether it's Chicago, whether it's Baltimore, these jurisdictions that have the highest spending per pupil in the whole country. And the numbers are atrocious of numbers like 32% of high schoolers can actually read on grade level or do math on grade level in cities like Baltimore. And I don't have the numbers exactly off the top of my head, but that's a pretty good ballpark of where we're at. So, and Mississippi did all this, by the way, without increasing their spending per pupil.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you the list of the top five states by education in America. They're currently number one is New Jersey. Number 2 is Florida. Number 3 is Colorado. Number 4 is Utah. And number 5 is Massachusetts. That seems fairly mixed.
It is, but the point I'm making is to go from 49th to top 20. Based on reform, based on policy. We're at the point in our conversation now, we're talking about policy. And this was Mississippi, the reddest of the red, taking a stance that is, we're actually going to have standards and we're going to enforce those standards, specifically the being held back if you don't read on grade level. The critics all said, if you do this, you're going to destroy the Mississippi education system because too many kids are going to fail, too many kids are going to get held back. It's a soft bigotry of low expectations. But guess what? They said, we'll do it anyway. And now all of a sudden you actually created an incentive and a consequence saying that the families, parents at home, you need to step up. And if your kid is falling behind, you're going to know about it because we're going to tell you, and you need to step in and help them get caught back up. And guess what? And they did. And the held back rate actually did not change before and after the implementation. So like so to my friends on the left, obviously Mississippi did what they did. California proposed to do the same thing. And the teachers union, which is a hardcore partisan left-wing organization, pretty much in every single state, they stepped in and they killed it. Is that not an issue when we're talking about how we're going to help young men get better?
I mean, I don't know. And if Mike is aware of like the details of this, then please step in of this particular policy set. But I'm not sure exactly how we can necessarily engage with it. All you're telling us is that, okay, and I'll take your word for it that Mississippi increased in the rankings. I think I might have heard something similar at some point in time, but I don't know any details. But I can take your word for it. That vastly improved. Well, Mississippi was at the absolute bottom. It should be easy to improve. Well, like, there's nowhere but up for them. But that's fantastic. Love to see it, right? But what you're telling us is that, okay, like within the California legislature, some sort of package was introduced, and then the teachers union was against it, right? Like, okay, what was the details of that package, right? Like, was it going to degrade teachers' workers' rights? I mean, like, well, then that would make sense that the teacher union stopped it, right? Like, what exactly were their objections to this specific policy? Like, what was the bill, right? Like, that would take us a lot of parts. I'm not exactly sure how we can necessarily engage with that. We can engage with the fact that, according to our friend Wick, and I'm taking his word for it as well, and if he's wrong, you blame him. There's increased suicidal rates in red states, right? Now, if that's true, like, we can think about that. Like, why would that be the case, right? Could it be the
Not
case that
all red states, to be clear.
Not all.
I just want to make
all,
sure,
of course,
like, not all of them.
Yeah,
It's
fair
just
enough.
Utah stuck
Right?
out at me because it's one of the highest. So
Yeah. So, like, what are the policies that are doing that? Are men there like feeling more hopeless? I mean, suicidality is it's a sign of hopelessness. So, like, why would why would that be? What is lacking in those states? Right? Like, that's something we could talk about.
Yeah, so
Well,
I would.
look, I know Wick actually inferred that it could be religion, but I was just looking it up, and I'm looking like 12 different sources. I just want to challenge what you said of Christian men having higher suicide.
well, not
pretty much
Christian
across the
men
board from PMC.
specifically.
Just Utah?
Utah stuck out at me, and it looks like a lot of the right-leaning states, let me bring up the map again.
So you're just making just a random correlation because they're right.
No, my
they're
question was,
Christian,
you said
Christians.
you made a statement that's saying that a lot of Christians have a lot of youth support, and so it really helps young men in that case. But I'm challenging it based on, well, you see, here's one example that I know has a huge focus on especially youth support, and that's Mormons. Like, we have youth groups, we have young men's, young women's, right? We have a large portion of our discipleship is put into helping young people, and it seems to be failing. And so I'm just wondering, like, is your method actually working? But I'll let you respond to that, and then I want to give it to Mr. Mike. So go ahead.
Yeah, because I mean, I'd looked this up before, and when you said that, I was like, wait a second, that's not right. And I was pulling up from a previous debate. I've got 12 different sources that are from the left, the right, like from Harvard and PMC, all saying overall, men that are plugged into a healthy church have overwhelmingly better mental health than men not.
Are we talking young
so I feel
men
like you're just kind of
specifically, or is
making a
it just
random
men in
correlation
general?
there.
That might be the difference, right? Are you talking young men specifically or men in general?
Young men.
Oh, okay. I'll have to look it up. But go ahead.
Yeah,
I have a map of suicidality rates by state. I'm going to put in our group chat this from the CDC. And so you guys can make adjustments yourselves. There's a lot of red in the middle of the country, but you guys can make adjustments for yourself from there.
Okay.
I mean, so I just want to respond. The could be something the left's doing. I don't know, but I don't think it's I don't think it's health. I don't think it's healthy churches.
Yeah, so I just want to respond to what Gen Z was saying about the Mississippi education. So first of all, that was an excellent achievement. But we're talking, when we say young men, I thought we were talking about men, working age men between 18 and 30 years old, right? This is improving literacy skills for much younger children. I just did a quick Google search. A lot of other states are trying to adopt a similar science of reading model. So I don't know exactly why the particular bill was killed in California. I see some recent news about California attempting to pass a similar bill based on a similar idea. But I would, if for whatever reason the California Teachers Union killed the bill, it can't be because we want our kids to be dumber, right? So
No.
Yeah, so I do think that example you gave isn't particularly relevant to the point of, which party is better for the education of young men. Particularly if we're looking at the job market. So I know I only mentioned this briefly, but AI regulation is a big part of the job market and the future of the job market. So again, the right has no intent in regulating AI at all. There's a lot of state level regulation coming from the blue states. And that is important to making sure that people can find work.
$5
So
from
to
$5 real quick from Kick Nastanza to say Christians donate to USAID, but if you mention the 14 million who will die because of Trump cuts, these MAGA panelists will laugh it off. Pretty Christian. Thank you for $5. Go ahead,
so
GenZ.
yeah, to the point where I agree. The teachers union is not sitting in the back room wiping their hands together saying, how can we best screw over the kids today? No, they don't do that. But this is an issue. This is a pretty core issue I have actually with the left generally. It's I think not inability, but there's a lot of the time where unintended consequences are not factored into the equation. And education is like one of the prime examples of that, because the teachers union, they're not out there to hurt the kids, but the unintended consequence of teachers union actions pretty regularly ends up hurting the kids, because the teachers union is there to be there on behalf of teachers and speak for teachers, which means get better hours, get better pay. But guess what? The reason the Mississippi Miracle worked, one of the requirements of it was investing significantly in extra training for teachers so they can learn this new phonics-based system of reading. And that requirement to take that time, extra time beyond just the actual time you're in the classroom, that's something that a teachers union, if your sole focus is how can I get my union members the most amount of money for the least amount of work, you're going to stand against that, because you're like, well, is there a pay raise that we're getting with this? Oh, no? Okay.
Teachers have continuing education credits all the time. Like they're one of the professions. Like doctors have this as well. Social workers do this too, right? We're outside of the actual doing a job. Like you are required to have to take credits to make sure you are keeping up with the latest trends or whatever, right? But that's already built into a teacher's schedule, right? Nationwide. Like, so it's hard for me to understand that, okay, we're trying to switch up the idea that we're trying to have a better reading practice. I don't know, right? A curriculum, a better reading curriculum. And they resisted it because they might have to take a class on that. What? That's crazy.
You can watch some Thomas Sowell interviews. He gives some great examples, specifically on teachers unions and the practical consequences of teachers that are so bad in the classroom. Their results were so bad on teaching children, but they could not be.
I'm not going to do a whole thing on like, oh, there's yes, they're bad teachers, right? And some of them can't be thrown out because of like a union that backs them, right? Protects them, right? Same thing for cops. A lot of bad cops and police unions protect them. Sure, that's the thing that happens within these groups. Fair enough, right? But specifically, the claim you made, right, was that this bill, which we haven't gotten a chance to examine, maybe Mike has, was killed because like teachers were too lazy to do continuing education credits, right? Which they already do, right? Specifically on how to teach phonics. Like, do you have proof of that?
So I mean, I'd have to look and find, like you said, if we can get a quote or something, that'd be the best. But I'm just going off of the information that I know, which is that the teachers union put their thumb on the scale because it required more work for the teachers. And here's the thing: if you've got a policy proposal that you've got your two groups here, you've got students, and you've got teachers, and sometimes their interests don't always line up. If the interests don't line up, which side is the union going to take? Is it going to take the side of the students against the teachers?
Sure, hon. But that would be the same.
So I haven't looked at why the bill was killed in 2024. I just did a quick Google search, and there's a similar replacement bill on the table now. So I'm guessing it was killed because there were things in it that were deficient one way or another. But this is something that California is working towards doing, right? Maybe whatever worked for Mississippi doesn't work for California. So they needed to change things, and you can't just carbon copy the Mississippi bill.
$10 from Meatwad to say nothing. I love these super chats. Thank you for that. I do want, though, to Vybe real quick. I do want to to like you talked about Christianity being your main thing here, and I want to address that just briefly. A lot of U.S. aid was fought for by Christians. Like Christian groups were funded by U.S. aid. Right? A lot of the charity work that a lot of Christian groups did was supported and funded by U.S. aid, and yet it was the Republicans who killed that. Right? Wouldn't that be an issue?
So,
From a Christian perspective.
yeah, well, here's the crazy thing. As soon as you say Christian, then all of a sudden you're also mega. And so, like you can see in his particular point here, he obviously thinks I have a mega hat hidden somewhere. Probably thinks that I keep my wife barefoot in the kitchen. Like there's these assumptions as soon as you say right Christian, and I don't think I'm not a far right. There are things that I actually meet in the middle on. I am not against all of Trump's policies, but I would not ever have a beer with Donald Trump, and I would never wear a mega hat. So, yeah, there are definitely, just because I say I'm Christian, all of a sudden I'm mega and anti-USA ID. This is part of the problem that I think we were bringing up in the beginning here. You can get so easily grouped as a particular type of person just because of an identity that you may say, even if you're not going into any of those things, right?
Okay, so you're against the defunding of USAID.
All of it, yes, but not some of it.
Look, everyone's okay with like if there was fraudulent stuff, sure, defend it. I don't think anyone cares about that, but they just gutted it entirely.
But
okay,
I also have a whole thing.
Enough.
I feel like it goes outside of this particular thing because we are having a men's crisis here in this country. If we need money that we're sending to other countries to and we have to pull it from somewhere, I wouldn't be necessarily opposed to pull some budget from there to help our guys here, right?
The USA, I don't want to turn this USA debate, but the USA budget was $35 billion, and we're giving $40 billion to Argentina. So whatever. I do want to give the mic though to Gen Z. Sorry for the side tangent. I was just really curious.
No, it's okay. So Mike, you made a point saying that you didn't think this was particularly relevant because we are talking about children, and the biggest jump that Mississippi did get was among fourth graders, and specifically fourth grade literacy. But I think that is relevant to our discussion here about which side is poised to best help men. And education, I think, is the root of all of that. And education that turns you not just into a robot that can repeat useless facts, but education that actually can cultivate you into a good citizen. And reading, so reading is kind of at the core of that. But the reason I brought up education, and specifically the Mississippi Miracle, is because it's which side is really taking the lead, taking the initiative on tackling education reform. Because I don't know if you guys have looked around lately at our standing in the world on education. It's not that good. And there are significant reforms that can and should happen. Things like, let's do more with school vouchers, because public education is just kind of a disaster across the board. School vouchers is a way you can get around that. I only see the right that is pushing for school vouchers and pushing for charter schools. Sounds like there is some on the left as far as trade schools, vocational schools. Best I could tell looking it up, it looks like they're trying to push for federal programs. This is where we'll have just a procedural difference of, we think they should be local programs and maybe state programs. I don't know if we need a federal apprenticeship program, but I've seen it. Right. I'm from Florida. Ron DeSantis got elected while I was still down there. He made school vouchers like a central piece of his campaign. Virginia, I was there for law school. Glenn Youngkin was running for president. His number one issue was education. So I'm seeing the right really grab the bull by the horns, take charge on the issue of education, whereas I'm not seeing the left do it, because you've got groups like these teachers unions that are actively standing in the way of good education reform. And we need to look no further than the COVID pandemic and Randy Weingarten with the National Teachers, whatever the National Teachers Union was. She was the one out there saying, we cannot reopen schools because it's too dangerous and teachers are literally going to die. And so teachers just got to sit and chill and not have to go in. It was a great time to be a teacher. And guess who paid the price? The kids. And that's borne out by all of the data. Prime, I see you're laughing, but the data is all there.
Yeah,
I'll let you respond in a second, Prime. In a second. $10 from Meatwad, $6.50. To say Gen Z lawyer's reaction to the man versus bear question demonstrates the problem. He doesn't like how the answer to the question makes him feel, so he rejects the question. That is gaslighting. Thank you for the $10. Okay, Prime, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Did you intend that for Mike? If I don't want to interrupt Mike, if Mike was your target.
Well, it was based on, right, that's how it kind of got on the point, but it's directed at both of you as far as you're the ones representing saying the left is better for men. I think education is the top easiest way we can help young men in this country, and I'm seeing the right that's doing a lot more and actually tackling issues in education and putting in some real legit good solutions.
Well, Mike can take it first, and I'll go after.
Yeah, I have a pretty short response to that, which is I'm sure if you look up Democratic politician policies at the federal, state, local level, they all want better education for everyone, right? It's the Republicans who are. You will find at a local level. I mean, there has to be a reason why, like the public school systems in New York are just better, right? They just are than most other places in the country. And these are blue
school board members
cities
getting recalled in some of these cities, like San Francisco. The parents are upset. It's the war on parents.
Yeah, but some of the best public schools in the country are in New York, California, San Francisco, Los Angeles, right? By every metric, if you look at SAT scores, if you look at college admissions outcomes, right? Like if you're just looking at public schools and not private schools, the schools in New York have fantastic outcomes. So I don't know where this comes from that the left doesn't care about education. I mean, it is the right trying to defund the Department of Education, and the left wants to fund education, right? Like the left wants to get school lunches to kids who are hungry.
GenZ Attorney has been like throwing out like spaghetti here, right? Like we're gonna figure out what sticks, right? I'm throwing a whole bunch of stuff. People were mad around the country. Ron DeSantis is the thing in Florida, and why haven't you mirrored what the Republicans are doing? Like what is this, right? Like this is nonsense. So yeah, okay. School choice, right? Charter schools, right? Obviously, we're not going to be able to finish this, especially with the time that we have available. But yeah, the left looks at charter schools very much differently, right? As more of a parasite on the public teat, right? That's what we see there. We don't. We see a lot of them failing. We see a lot of them choosing which children they'll take, right? And so they can choose the best kids, and then they say, well, look at our results, right? Once we got rid of the disabled kids, the foreign kids, and the special needs kids, right? Once we put that into public schools, we turned out we had really great test results. Amazing work, right? So yes, but to think that the left doesn't care about education, right? Oh, I can tell you, as probably the farthest left person here on screen, that comes up on every single campaign. Of course it is. It's a deeply local issue, and we talk about it all the time in blue states. Yeah, it's a big focus, right? How do we improve education? And to say that, well, I guess in San Francisco, someone got recalled because parents are mad, and now there's a war on parents. You're just like throwing out a whole bunch of like nonsense claims, right? And I guess we have to just like respond to them. Why haven't you addressed these things, right? That might be phantom issues, right? You don't know. We provided no verification for any of these things, but like why hasn't the left addressed all these things? It's nonsense. Of course we're dealing with education, right? Of course we're talking about funding schools more. We're all about putting more funding in public schools, right? We're all about like figuring out ways to make the education more impactful. We're all about ways to lower the debt load that kids take out when they're going to college, right? All about ways to expand that access and to keep the Department of Education attacked. The education has been attacked on nonstop since the Trump administration has come up with, right? But yes, someone in San Francisco got recalled, and so must be a war on parents. Whatever.
I'll give you we can do one concrete example, and we can go super deep in the weeds because I was directly involved with it, and it was 2021 Virginia governor's election. Virginia is not a red state. Virginia is a very blue state. Largely blue. I believe it's like a 60-40 at least as of the last couple elections.
It's a purplish, sorry, but like it's trending blue.
I mean, it hasn't voted a Republican president in like 20 years or something. It is, and I can't remember the last time they had a Republican governor either. Either way, this is not a Republican state by any means. Glenn Youngkin ran a campaign where his top issue was education, and he focused on Loudoun County, Virginia, which is one of the counties that is in the DMV, is outside of DC. Loudoun County, because Loudoun County was going insane off the walls with their education policy and excluding parents completely from the process. Parents were showing up at school board meetings. I was at these school board meetings, just seeing everything happening, and it was thing after thing that parents were getting up and speaking to the school board and saying, and I'd have to pull the actual proposed policy just to give you some of the actual action points.
Please, what is so all you're telling us is that parents are mad, like there were concerned citizens, and they came to a meeting, and then they were mad, and there were loud voices, and it was very scary. Okay, like what does that have to do with anything? And how does it prove that the right cares about men more?
Because look at the election. Look, Loudoun County was the largest shifting county in the entire state of Virginia in the 2021 governor's election. You could look that up. It shifted to the right more than any other county because it became the epicenter of an education fight, and the Democratic candidate.
Wait, was this a fight about like the gender stuff? What is the what were the parents' complaints? Like, what were the parents being excluded from?
Who knows?
I do want to just say $10 from Frank to say, you know what it's for, whore? Yes, I do. Thank you for the $10. You're a man of your word. Okay, but I will also say, less cryptically, that we are. Can we bring this back to young men? Like, I think we're a little
Vybe
off.
says he has to go.
Huh?
Vybe said he has to go.
Oh yeah. Okay, we gotta wrap it up. Okay, Vybe, do you got a closing thoughts for us? Closing statement?
Yeah, no. I want to keep going, but it's time to feed the family, just like our last guy.
Again.
Bro.
No. Strikes again.
Hey, no, thanks a lot. Haven't really changed my mind. Am interested to see, now that the federal government had the last 60 years to even up all the educational systems across all the states, if the states can do it on their own this time. May not work, might work, but give them a little bit more power. I don't think we're defunding the education system. I think we're changing where the power is to see if the state can actually manage it when not being told what to do. You guys are awesome. Thanks for having me on, Wick. I'd love to do it again. Next time I'll make sure this is 3 a.m. or 3 p.m. for me, like right when the kids get out of school. But I'll try to make sure I can stay on uninterrupted next time.
That would be best. Thank you for being here. Where can people find you?
Oh, Vybe on YouTube.
Check them out, gang. Links in my YouTube description. Thank you for being here. We'll see you later.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks.
Do the rest of you need to go, or do you have time to address what we're
I don't have kids, right? Because I've been emasculated on this feminist world, and so I don't have a partner.
Well,
and that means I can dedicate all my time to you.
Strikes again, but it's up to you. I do want to be respectful of your time, but if you guys have 10 more minutes to kind of wind it down, I think that would be helpful to the discussion. It's up to you.
Yeah,
I can hang on.
100%.
Okay, just making sure. Okay, that said, I do want to bring it so. Can you give us Gen Z, right? Can you give us why the Youngkin election specifically showcased that the right is better on young men's issues? Can you connect those dots for us? I'm going to give you the floor uninterrupted. I'm looking at you, Prime,
okay.
Right? Uninterrupted to connect those dots for us. Go ahead.
So specifically, I mean, the point I'm getting at is just having to do with education and what solutions are most conducive to a healthy, positive education system that's going to produce the best outcomes for the students. My position is that left-wing education basically have gone completely woke, and they've adopted a whole litany of crazy policies that do not put education first. It puts cultural stuff first. It distracts away. And that's an issue. Youngkin ran his campaign focused on Loudoun County because there were a variety of issues, several different ones that popped up all during the course of the election. One, there was a parent's daughter who was assaulted in the bathroom by a male student, but it was a non-binary identifying student, and it was a very vicious assault of a bodily orifice that typically does not receive anything. If you will catch my drift of the female student. It was a vicious assault, and he was there to speak about it at the school board meeting. He was denied the opportunity to speak. He was provoked by agitators there that were saying that your daughter's a liar, and he ended up blowing up. He actually got arrested in trespass for it. Then his story came out after of why he was the one who got arrested. That was one of the issues. Another issue, there was a mandatory compelled speech pronoun policy saying that if a student tells you their preferred pronouns, you have to respect it. There was a gym teacher, elementary school, who said, as a Christian, I believe this violates my faith, so I'm not going to use it. I'm just not going to use any pronoun. He was suspended for that, which then turned into both a free exercise of religion issue and a freedom of speech issue on whether you can compel him to speak. He ended up winning his case against the school board. So that, and then there was a couple other things going on, but it was all happening all at the same time. And put on top of that by the fact the Democratic candidate, Terry McAuliffe, said in open debate that parents do not have a role in the education system. And that was kind of the trifecta there that then landed Glenn Youngkin in the seat. The reason all this is relevant to young men is because when we're talking about education and having education policies that make sense. And the way the left is approaching education, I know no one is in the back room conspiring about how to destroy the children's futures, but the unintended consequences of left-wing education policy, it's detrimental. It's detrimental.
Yeah, I just want to respond to. So I looked up this, and I'm not accusing you of lying. You might be misremembering. The girl who was charged with, it was a 15-year-old boy charged with sexually assaulting a girl in Loudoun County. He was not non-binary. He sexually assaulted her in the bathroom.
Wearing a skirt, right?
I don't know what he was wearing. I'm looking at some reporting. Basically, his mom said he's not transgender, and this became like a conservative talking point, right? They like painted him as non-binary, but he's like his mom said he's not non-binary. So I don't know, like, even if that is not 100% reliable, like it's clearly disputed that he's non-binary. And this is not even an education point, right? This is like a boy walking into a bathroom and sexually assaulting a girl, which is a horrible thing, but this isn't something that anybody wants to happen, or this isn't the result of any policy, right? Like, I don't understand, even if you have a non-binary bathroom, how that, like, people have been assaulting women, men have been assaulting women in bathrooms, regardless of whether the bathroom is labeled as non-binary or not, right? So like, that's just so besides the point. And then there's a gym teacher who doesn't want to use a child's preferred pronouns. I don't know how he uses no pronouns at all. Maybe he only uses the child's name, I guess. But this is like essentially a gym teacher saying, no, I don't want to be respectful to one of my students.
So he should be fired?
Yeah, I mean, a teacher who wants to bully their students
that's bullying, to use someone's name instead of a pronoun, to say, I'm just going to call you by your name?
To intentionally reject their like completely harmless request of using a particular pronoun, or, you know, we also don't know the details of what this gym teacher said to the kid, right? So like
we do.
But none of this is an education specific thing, right? Like, this doesn't impact how smart young men are. This doesn't impact like whether they're taught math or how their chemistry education goes or what their SAT scores are like, right? This is all gender, war, culture issues. And so if these two examples are like what is an example of the right being good on education, this is just the right fighting the gender culture war.
Right.
This
Exactly
isn't education based.
It's the parents.
We asked for, you know, examples of, like, you know, the right standing up for young men, or the left failing them at the very least, right? And what we get are culture war fights on might be a non-binary person, right? Oh, and then there's some gym teacher in a state who got fired for not following like regulations, right? Like, that's the examples we get, right? It's not about policies, about, okay, well, how do we address the needs of our young boys, right? I think maybe it was Vybe, maybe it was GenZattorney, I think previously talked about, hey, like, maybe we should have like counselors or something in the schools to like address their mental health issues, right? Well, I would love more counselors in schools. Let's give schools more money so they can hire counselors, because I know a lot of schools fired their counselors because they couldn't afford them in the budget anymore, right? I would love them to have more mental health. That's something that perfectly falls in line with the left. I would love to give boys a more like in school a curriculum that they find more appealing, right? Whether that just be like PE to get their energy out, whether that be like wood shop or metal shop or something, right? Something with their hands that tends to attract boys. Let's make sure schools have that. I know my school, they cut most of that stuff, right? By the time like I was going through that time, like those classes were like mostly shut down, and so that sucked. There were things that I was excited I wanted to do. I couldn't do it anymore. Let's expand on that, right? Instead, right, someone was non-binary and like maybe, and it did a bad thing, which like unfortunately men do all the time, right? That's why women don't want to be in the woods with them, right? Like that was the whole point of the conversation. So like, please, like, give us something that actually matters to the topic at hand.
So there's a great, you brought up a great point about things that used to be a mainstay in education that are no longer. Things like gym class, things like the ability to play dodgeball, which I've seen articles of how that's been banned, or think pieces how it needs to be banned because it reinforces toxic masculinity, which is what I led off the whole thing with, and it makes kids feel left out and whatnot. And so this is another reform that my understanding of the literature is pretty strong support of segregated gender elementary schools, because little boys and little girls learn completely differently. And by forcing little boys to have to sit down, to not have as much recess time, to not have really anything that is more conducive to how a young boy is able to learn, it's very, and also the fact that nearly every teacher at the younger level is female. Would be nice to have more male teachers in these levels just to create these role models and create these examples. But this is just another example, though, of, I'm sorry, I think we can agree, education is not a particularly right-wing institution as far as the political priors of the people that are within.
That's the way to attract male teachers. How would you do that from a right-leaning perspective?
So, I mean, we can take the great success that the feminist movement has had with the whole women in STEM idea, and we could just invert that and say, hey, man, maybe I want to get, once again, it's the Jonathan Haidt podcast I was watching. He called it HEAL. It was healthcare, education, and I forget the other two. But it's basically the inverse. These are primarily female-dominated fields that, yeah, maybe we can pull a page from the feminist playbook and say it is okay, men, to work in some of these more female-dominated fields. And in fact, that might be a good thing to give.
Who's telling them it's not okay?
So I don't know that it's anyone saying it's not okay. It's more so.
Hold on. If you say you're a male teacher, who's more likely to make fun of you? Someone on the right or someone on the left?
I think you could get some bro jabs that might be thrown at you. But if you want to talk about the ability to like date and attract a woman, the data on that continues to say that women. That has nothing
to do with what I asked, though. Like my question though is, yes, I agree that society has denigrated male teachers and they have fled the field. But the question is, what side of the aisle is responsible for that primarily? And it's not the left.
So I don't know if we could attribute it to a political side that's leading to less teachers, because I don't know what is the right doing that's saying it's not cool to be a teacher.
Education is gay and you should stay out of it. That's the drumbeat from the right.
Yeah, I'll grant
like trade
you
schools,
that
though.
The left could do a better job of advocating for men in these roles, right? The left hasn't really said, let's do these male nurse or male teacher programs. But the right's vision of masculinity actively pushes men away from these careers, right? These are effeminate jobs. The right has a very rigid view of gender norms within society. This is what women should do. This is what men should do. And this is what men should do are things like not teaching or being a nurse or anything. That is the right's view of masculinity. So even if it's not about making fun of male teachers, right? Whatever the right says men are, it's not teachers and nurses.
No, but see, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think if the main call above all else is to become a protector and a provider, right? And hey, nurses, they can make they make real good money, or they can at least. And so if you can be a protector and a provider, to me, it's kind of a who cares what you're doing, so long as it's something that you're proud of and you do with honor, dignity, and respect. That's the only thing that matters to me as someone. I would consider myself a traditionally conservative masculine male. I would have no issue with a male friend of mine who was a nurse and was able to protect his family and provide for his family that way. So I don't know who on the right is exactly saying these are, like, to your point, Wick, it's like, yes, there's people saying educate, like, don't go to college, but it's because, or college is a scam. That's the phrase I keep hearing. But yeah, it's because they keep saying, yeah, because
They
it's a big waste
also
of money. You go in super
continuously
debt.
they also continuously say that women are caretakers, women are the ones that are better with children. This is like anyone who is in my chat asking who on the right is saying this. If you ever heard anyone on the right saying the women are primarily the caretakers of the home and the caretakers of the children, that's who's saying it. And if you're telling me no one on the right is saying that, you're lying.
No.
And this is mostly the
this
chat,
is
not
like-
to you. Sorry, I'm just mad at
Okay.
chat with people going,
Yeah.
"Who's saying that? Who's saying that?" As if I don't have fucking ears and fucking eyes.
Yeah, the right's
okay?
resistance to feminism as a whole is rooted in this, right? Like, because feminism is about what? It's about women having the choice to do whatever job they want, and also men, right? That men aren't locked into a particular gender role. But when the right says, feminism is destroying the country, it's, the poison or whatever, they're saying the thing they're taking issue with is feminism telling people you're not stuck in a particular gender role, right? So the right is pro gender roles, right? They're saying women have to be this way, men have to be this way. And that means that certain jobs are only for women and certain jobs are only for men. That's a very, I'm not accusing you personally of thinking that way, Gen Z, but
Yeah.
that is a very common refrain among the right, especially when they're talking about feminism.
So, but I don't think the one thing I'll push back on hard with that is, and once again, I think you're great. I love talking with you, Mike. I think you're wrong in your assessment, though, that it is the right saying this has to be what happens. What I see it as, people on the right, yes, they'll make morally prescriptive statements like this should happen. A man should be a protector and a provider, and a woman should be a caretaker who is able to rear and raise the next generation so that our society can continue to function. And yes, and so we can make a morally prescriptive statement about what should happen. But then the reality of what we're seeing is a movement like the feminist movement. First off, yes, my position still is strongly that it is built largely around denigrating men. But on top of that, like the birth rate has just hit a brand new low, and every single TikTok I saw of it that was not just like 6 likes, it was like hundreds and thousands and millions of likes, saying like, "Good job, ladies. Let's keep it going. Yeah, F them kids." So this is not just a like.
There was a random tweet with lots of likes out there. Oh no!
Yeah, I think this is interesting to me. I understand this is far afield of the topic, but there is a resistance among young people generally against having children. But that is in protest of what young people view as the economic problems that they're facing. Right? What young people will say, the reason why they don't want to have kids is because they can't afford it, and so that's not a feminism thing, right? Feminism isn't telling women to not have children.
See, but no, though. So I have to hard disagree again, because there was just a poll that came out. It was fascinating. It was asking young people, what's your 13 priorities in life, right? And you rank them 1 through 13. When you sorted it out based on who they voted for and by gender, the young men who voted for Trump, the number 1 out of 13 thing they said was their top goal and priority in life. It was to have children and be a father. And when you flip that and you go for the women who voted for Kamala Harris, having children was 12th or 13th. It was either last or second to last. The number 1 thing for them was to I believe it was to have a career that they enjoy, or to make enough money to be financially stable. It was something to do with career finances. So I'm pushing back hard on your point to say that, young people generally just are generally child averse because they don't think they can afford it. Well, I've never bought into that. That is purely a lifestyle choice of rich people who don't want to be burdened by having children that they need to rear. They want to be able to travel the world and whatnot. It doesn't change the fact that you've got illegal immigrants that will come here and have like 7 kids and not even be able to take full use of all the benefits that the society is able to provide for them by working cash under the table jobs. So I just wholeheartedly reject the whole notion that people are choosing not to have kids because it's just too expensive.
Before you respond, $2 from Kick Nastanza to say, are Donald Trump, Hegseth, or RFK good role models? I'm assuming for young men.
Is that for us to answer? I'd say no.
If you want to answer it, you can.
Yeah.
He only gave you $2,
actually,
so you don't have to spend a lot of time on it. Okay.
Yeah, I would agree on a personal moral level. Trump, I think, is an easy, not someone you'd want to emulate. Honestly, I just don't know enough about Hexeth or RFK personally, like on a character level, to speak one way or another. I think we've seen enough of Trump's character, though, to answer that.
Hexeth is the drunk, carousing fool that was accused of assaulting women under his care, right? Like not care, employment. And RFK, well, just general disaster of a human being, who, I mean, I don't know. He does weird shit, just like in general. He does actually a lot of weird shit. Oh, and he cheats on his wife a lot. That's the one thing. So I don't know. I wouldn't say they're pretty good at role models either. That being said, I wouldn't saddle the right with like, well, okay, then that means they don't have no good role models. But I mean, just the people who happen to be at the top of the government just aren't the best. But like Gen Z, and maybe we're just going off in the
Well, do we
tangent
have
now, and
anyone
that's
on the
okay.
right who wants to jump in and kind of even this out? I'm liking the discussion. We might end soon, but $5 from Meatwad to saying that a male teacher might take jabs from the bros is a great example of toxic masculinity. Thank you. But I do want to even this out. So if you're more on Gen Z's side and you want to jump on in and help them out,
Here's the
this
thing,
is
though.
kind of like the after show. So.
I have
I
to
don't mean-
assume. Sorry. Call me just based on the comment, and then we can go back to the discussion. I have to assume, maybe call me sexist here, but the feeling I get from saying something like that would have to be that's not a man making that comment, because I know we kind of meme on the idea of locker room talk, but like men will say the most rude, horrible things to each other, but they will say it out of love. And I don't think that's something that women completely understand, because usually when they say something, they'll say the nicest possible thing word wise, but the meaning behind it is so completely sinister. I think that's something women can learn about men, is we can be real mean to each other, but it's all out of love. But anyway, sorry.
I'm not particular. Like, I don't find those generalizations to be accurate, just on any from any perspective. But I want to respond to your point about the surveys of young men wanting children more than young women. I mean, that is also easier for men to say, right? The burden and the risks involved with having children is much greater for women. So, let's say I grant you the premise that feminism has, before feminism, women were forced into particular roles, right? They couldn't own land, they couldn't do whatever, they had to have kids. So now we have feminism where women have a choice, and some women are choosing not to have kids. I mean, is your solution to that to force them to have kids again, like societally, or
No.
how do we resolve the problem where, for men for whom, at least physically, childbirth and child rearing is not as big of a burden or a risk.
And
for women,
and to be clear, birth rates across all cultures and countries are in decline. The ones who've been feminized, and even Russia is having huge drops in birth rates and things like that. I mean, like, it's global.
Yeah. So I don't know. You can blame. Yeah, I guess that's my question: is what's the right solution to this? Because the left solution is an economic one.
So the right solution is, it's not saying we're going to compel you. I know at our No Kings friends and whatnot, they love going out in their Handmaid's Tale outfits, but no one on the right is saying that. No one's even joking about that. So I don't. That's
Hold on.
Sorry, Wick.
I've debated some who are kind of advocating for things like that, right? But anyway, go ahead.
So the solution is not compelled childbirth, of course not. The solution, though, is bringing it back to the culture, which is where I wanted to have this conversation at primarily, because it comes down to, we have to, I think, something we've lost as a country, and this is another thing I'm ripping from Jonathan Haidt. It's that there has to be a rite of passage for a young person to become an adult, for a girl to become a woman and a boy to become a man. His point is that girls, it's built in biologically. Once you start menstruating, it's a monthly thing. It's painful, and it physically makes you an adult in the sense that you can now bear and have children. So that's built in to grow up and become a woman. For boys to grow up and become men, the rite of passage, it used to be, things like going off to war and maybe dying, things where you can prove your courage and prove your valor to other men, and get these life experiences that mature you and make you grow up. And in a time where we are not going off to war and dying, in a time where there really are not these opportunities to prove your courage and valor to other men, that's why so many young men feel like they become lost, because they don't know how to be a man. They don't, if there's no positive role model in your life, if there's no really men around you that are able to be, to be the role model or to show you how you become a man, then yes, that's how you become lost. That's how you become suicidal, because you feel like you're purposeless. And there was a survey, they cited in the video, that suicidality among young people was pretty consistent at like 9% for like from like 1980 to 2010. It was just pretty much 9% across the board of like expressing suicidal ideations among young men. Between 2010 and 2015, it doubled. And
but you know why Jonathan Haidt says that they doubled, right? He has a very specific thing he points to.
Yeah, social media.
Yes, exactly. Right. It's not
the
left. It's not the right. It's social media.
So it's so it becomes a question though of, so times change. How different developments in the law and the culture and technology, how these new things come into effect, will affect the genders differently. And we have to recognize that when issues pop up, that they are an issue, and now it's something that actually needs to be addressed. And that's bringing it back to the main point. It feels like the left is very hesitant. Even when they do want to talk about men's issues, it's almost always going to be a caveat of, like, I quoted the White Dudes for Harris guy earlier, saying like, yeah, the last time a bunch of white dudes got around to talk about their feelings, they were wearing a bunch of pointy hats. So I understand the complicated history here, saying that it's white men is just the KKK. So it's like, get it into...
Can we focus on what you've just said, right? You said that the point that girls become women is when they have their period. You mean 12-year-olds? They just become, they're a lady now when a 12-year-old or even younger gets her period? Nonsense, right? Like, it's crazy.
I'm not okay.
I don't think he. Oh, hold on. In Gen Z's defense, I don't think he meant that the way that you're.
I'll explain exactly. I'll explain it exactly, because I'm going to cut you off, because I'm not going to get. Not saying you're misconstruing in the sense of the words I said, but I think you are completely misconstruing the meaning. Of course, I'm not here advocating that, legally speaking, you are a woman at 12 years old. That's ridiculous. That's nonsense. I'm saying, though, when you start to make the transition from a child to an adult, just look back through history. Boys, 12, 13, 14. This is when they've started being treated as adults through history. Same with girls. It still happens around the world. 12, 13, 14-year-old girls get married off to old men. So I'm not making a point of...
Sorry. What is the... So is that... So around, okay, so you're saying we've lost something here in the West, right? That kids of this age are treated as adults, and then the example you give me is that there's child marriage in other places, right? Look at that, right? Clear example. Now you're an adult. You're not legally adult, of course not. I would agree, right? But yeah, we're gonna marry you to an old man. This is the example you provide. This is crazy.
That wasn't the point that Gen Z was trying to make.
Let me just make a final point, then I would love to hear what you have to say. Sorry. And then the other thing was on the men, right? Like, oh yeah, the way we usually became men is that we sent them off to die in some war of aggression, right? And since we can't send child soldiers off to die, I guess they can't become a man. They don't know that transition point. Well, first of all, we didn't have child soldiers in the 50s, right? We weren't doing that in this country. But still, that was the point where men were men, I guess, right? And they understood what it was to be a man. Like, no, there at any point I would say that right now we are in some sort of inflection point or transition period, right? As a society, right? We're coming up with a new social contract, right? How should we treat each other, right? We've done this multiple times, right? Like in the post-civil rights period, that was a time of transition, okay? Between the races, just a new way of interacting with each other, and there's lots of friction points when that happens, right? Same thing is happening here. Women have like advanced themselves and gotten more rights, and now we having that friction. We got to figure that out. But it's not like men can't figure out when they're men, right? Like there's like no opportunities for that, right? And the good examples that you brought up was, hey, like other countries, they got child marriage, and so now when you're an adult.
Well, let's let Gen Z respond to that, and then Deej wanted in. So go ahead.
No, I mean, obviously the point is not advocating for child marriage. That was an example that's being brought up of how other places are using it. My point that I'm bringing up is saying, when we are not living in a time where there's a war every generation, where that's just the default, which is how it's been basically for the entirety of human history, by the way. The flourishing of peace globally, relatively speaking, is a relatively new concept for the
constant war.
for the human race.
Constant war, right? Like the entire time you've been alive, the U.S. has been at war, right?
Not in a I'm suiting up and I'm going to fight myself. You could talk about
plenty of people went and fight. Like, yeah, I mean, we sent
like
an entire generation of individuals like went and died in Iraq, right? Like for like the span of like 20 years. Right?
Yes,
like,
but there wasn't a countrywide mobilization into a war like World War II or even like Vietnam to a lesser extent. There's people who chose to sign up.
Is the only way that men can become men?
No, I'm trying to get to the point. I'm trying to get to the point that the whole reason I brought this up was when we don't have what's typically been the example for all of human history for the opportunity for young men to go prove their courage and valor. We have to have a replacement. We have to have something.
So I'm asking what that was a replacement. So like if you're saying it's not we don't need violence. That's the example you keep bringing up, but we don't need violence to be this inflection point for boys to become men, right? Then what would that be?
So it gets it. Well, this is why young men are getting so far left behind, because they're seeing their opportunity to seek courage and valor in crypto scams, in sports betting, and they're thinking, I'm in my 20s. I have to show the other young men around me that like I'm accomplished and I'm successful. When everyone knows like the principles of success for financial success are pretty well standard, pretty well grounded, and they're not very sexy. It's say 15% of your income, throw it in the S&P 500, and forget about it, and you'll be a multimillionaire when you retire.
Soldiers are suicidal. That's another thing you brought up, right? That like, the men are suicidal now because soldiers are extremely suicidal. Just want to put that point out there so we don't forget it. But I'm sorry, Deej. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. The thing is the point that GenZattorney is making is not that the like for men to become men, they have to go to war and die, right? The point he was making was that generally speaking, throughout history, women became women by virtue of growing up and becoming women. And that to their detriment, a lot of them didn't have a choice in being married off at young ages or whatever. But for men, generally speaking, to be a man, you had to do something. You had to go out. You had to become a man. You didn't necessarily do it by virtue of just reaching maturity. That's the point Gen Z was making. The example he gave was going out to war. Another example that you could make is like, at 12 years old, a lot of boys would go and they would take on apprenticeships and they would learn a trade through that way before, college became mainstream. But, it's listening to this conversation. Just one point I wanted to get in is that so far from both you, Prime, and Mike, your solutions for why you would have Democrats be the model for young men comes down to politics and policy. And I think that is kind of missing the point of why it is that young men aren't adopting, the policies or even the values of the Democratic Party. It's not about the policy in most cases. And if you make it about the policy, it sounds to men like you're just trying to win their vote and not actually trying to, see them as individuals and people. They're just a voting block. And that's one thing that I've kind of been hearing. That's sort of the vibe I've been getting.
I appreciate you for saying that. It's interesting, and I do want to respond to it, which is, growing up and becoming an adult is complicated, both for men and for women, right? There are people who go to war and they never grow up to become men. And there are tons of people who become men without going to war. And same with women. There are women who go through puberty and they have not become adults. You could have a kid who, your parents die when you're young and you have to take care of your sibling. You grow up real fast, right? There are some people who do go to war, who come back and, they're still 35 years old and they're not grown up in mom's basement. So I think the process in which a young boy becomes a man or a young woman or a young girl becomes a woman is very complex and very individual. So on a party level and a policy level, it's almost impossible to say, what can this particular party do for a generation trying to figure out what does it mean to be an adult, right? That's always complex. So the only thing a party can do, the only thing a government can do is create an environment that gives people the resources, the time, and the space to answer that question for themselves in as many ways as possible. So if you were to neuter people's opportunities when they're very young, then there's obviously less room for them to grow into being a man. And the Democratic Party is about providing resources, providing services, and providing opportunity for people through government spending. Yes, right. I understand that this does require government spending, and that's another conversation about how the government should operate. But if we're acting under the umbrella of, okay, the government is willing to spend, just how should it spend, right? The Democratic position is to spend to create opportunities so that people can have the resources to grow into an adult, whatever that means for themselves. And that can take all kinds of different forms. I don't think you ever needed to go to war, right? There are tons of people during World War II who became men without fighting, without storming the beach.
What vision of a man do you think the Democratic Party like let's say on a policy level, the Democrats enable young men and men to be whatever the image of an ideal man looks like to the Democratic Party. What do you think the current Democratic Party as a whole, and not just the Democratic Party, but the people that vote for Democrats, what, I guess, archetype of a man do you think that they communicate to young men?
So I think I said this earlier, the Democrats do a terrible job of communicating to young men. So to answer that question directly, the Democrats have not communicated a vision or an image of what a man is supposed to be. And I think the reason for that partly is the Democrats have generally been bad about messaging, but also the Democrats are allergic to being prescriptive in ways that the Republicans are more comfortable with, right? So the Democrats really, really don't like telling people you have to be, or you should, right? I don't want to say have, you should be this way or that way. And so maybe there's an argument to be made that the Democrats need to take a stronger stance on this, but it's a very lowercase l liberalism view of saying you can kind of decide for yourself what it means to be a man. We just want to give you the resources to make that decision and to flourish in whatever ways you need, right? So fair, if your criticism of the Democratic Party is they don't give a concrete vision of what it means to be a man to young men, I think that's fair. I just don't know if the Democrats need to, and if the Democrats do need to, how you arrive at that vision.
So, Wick, are you a Democrat or a registered Democrat?
Me? I am a
Or
Democrat,
do you
yes.
identify? Yeah, see, perfect example. Democrats are awful, right? And so you'll never see me push Democrats as the vision for anything really, right? I think it's just an awful failure of a party. But it's just like the best like vehicle I have to like enact any of the policies I want for now, any which way, right? So certainly that was not my argument. I won't speak for our friend Mike here. But you talked about like, when men were growing up, right? Like, or an example of men or boys becoming men, right? Would be like taking an apprenticeship. Okay, right? So that sounds like a labor issue. You're saying, hey, like when they become a man is when they become a provider. So to become a provider, you need employment, right? And Democrats are very much focused on employment, right? Through the labor practices I was talking about previously.
I got to cut off. You're still missing the point.
Hold on. No, you don't. I'm gonna go right to you. I'm gonna go right to you. I promise. I like 2 more sentences. So yes, but it is a labor issue, right? And Democrats are very much focused on labor issues and giving them more opportunities, including educational opportunities. And the final thing is that how else should a political party address social issues? Obviously through policies, right? What our friend Mike said was actually absolutely correct. We want to create an environment, right, where these individuals can flourish. And the way they can flourish, how we can address their issues, the thing that you're voting for, are obviously the policies, right? I only feel like a voter, right, from a political party? Well, of course. What else would you be? Not their lover.
Okay, $5 from Zephyr Hash, and I'm going to give it to Deej. Says, why are Obama, Biden, Buttigieg, Sanders, etc., not seen as role models for young men? Several celebrities, CEOs, etc. are all Democrats. Dems, and $5 more, says Dems on an ethical level don't tokenize men. The Republican vision of men is completely homogenous and requires lots of steroids. Why is that good? Deej, Mike's yours.
Yeah, so honestly, Prime, you just completely glossed over the point of what was being discussed, and I'll just move on. The
You can't address
thing
your own
is,
words, so you had to reply. And like I applied directly to what you said. You talked about
no,
apprenticeships, right? And then I said, okay.
you took what I said, which was that generally
I
speaking,
took the
throughout
words.
history, to become a man, you had a rite of passage you had to go through. That could be a whole host of different things, and you basically, because a Gen Z attorney said war, and I said an intern, or not an internship, an apprenticeship, you then construed it to, oh,
I
well, it's just
examined your
economics and
words.
making money.
Sorry, I should
That's
have
not.
examined your words. Okay, right. So
No,
when Gen Z says wars,
you can
I
look
should not
past
have
the
hold on.
example and the analogy
I'll just
and
give you.
identify.
Okay. I'm stepping in here. An example from my youth, many years ago. Okay, as terrible as I might be. Movies, cinema, everything said a man became a man when he had sex. That was the rite of passage for men when I was growing up. Have sex with a woman, now you're a man, okay? She made a man out of you, right? And there's all sorts of things in the culture where that was our rite of passage. But there is, whether that's a good rite of passage or a bad rite of passage, that was considered, at least in America, culturally, the rite of passage. But I do want to move on. I don't want to keep going, right? And we're going to end this. Unless I get $100 more in super chats in the next 20 minutes, we're going to end this at 9. We'll keep going if you keep paying, gang. But that's what we're doing. But Deej, I want you to get on to your next point. You had something else to say. I want you to get to it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to reply a little bit to you, Mike, on the topic of, because I think we both agree, the Democrats not doing a good idea or a good job of presenting an archetype of what a man should be. I think, though, it goes deeper than that. It's not just that they're promoting what the image of a man should be. They're absolutely, and whether it's the politicians or it's the voting base, they're promoting an idea of what a man shouldn't be, and they are demonizing things that, there are some things that should be demonized, right? Wanton aggression, lashing out when you should have temperance. Those are obviously bad things, but, there's kind of a lot of ideals that have been demonized about being a man from the left and from the Democrats that really are not that bad. Like, we got mansplaining, we got manspreading, we've got, in Gen Z attorney brought up the, bear situation, whatever. There pretty much every single major political contagion phenomenon that has attacked the core of what being a man is has come from the left, right? You have things like male privilege. You have things like white privilege. It's like if you look at the hierarchy of the privileged classes, being a white male puts you literally at the very top echelons of privilege and oppression. It's like if you're a white male, like the only possible thing that you can do to not be like stereotypically the worst oppressor in the oppressor dynamic lens is to become trans. Either gay, but trans is higher on, the oppression or victimization tier.
I agree that the left and the Democrats have identified specific characteristics of, being a man and criticize them, right? So the examples you gave, mansplaining, manspreading. And perhaps an argument could be made that, people on Twitter or whatever have taken it too far. But I want to emphasize that the roots of those criticisms have been very legitimate, where they're a lot because historically men have been in a privileged position, right? So if we're talking literally on a legal level, right? Historically, men have not had to consider or be aware of certain behaviors that were accepted among men, societally accepted among men, but not societally accepted among women. And so some examples that I've heard from teachers is the way young children are educated in schools, right? Boys will be boys. Boys can be a little bit more rough. They can be a little bit more rowdy. And the expectation on girls is you have to sit still, listen, and raise your hand.
Well, on that point, though, that goes to what Gen Z was saying, which is that like formal education as a whole is geared more towards the female psyche than the male. So kind of part of the reason they say boys will be boys is because what they're seeing is that there is a certain behavior that men exhibit where they have a harder time sitting down and they have a harder time just studying and listening the same way that girls do. And so, and I'm not saying that men don't, like, the male and female experience in this world drastically different. But the problem is that you can't just say, well, men just have all these privileges and women have no privileges, right? Neither side is a blank slate. And there are privileges that have been conferred to women and there are privileges that have been conferred to men. And it's not like there is, like throughout all of history, only one person has been more favored. It was probably a lot worse to get conscripted during World War II or any of the great wars than it was to have to stay home and work the factories. So
I would
yes,
agree with
they're
you
different.
that-
But I wouldn't say that it's like an absolute we should it's okay to denigrate men and being what a man is because they have certain privileges throughout history.
Just real quick before you respond, $2. Just real quick before you respond, $2 from Icarus to say he likes taking jabs from the bros. Sounds gay. Thank you for the $2. Okay, let's give it to Mike.
Why are you entertaining this though? Right, like Mike. Why are you giving ground here? This is nonsense. Okay,
let's see what Mike has to say.
The one thing I will say, right, is that it's true, right? For Wick to redeem his sins, he has to get a boob job. He has to become trans. That's the only way he can redeem himself for being a white man. All right, well, another fever dream. So he talks about mansplaining and manspreading and then white privilege, and he's like, well, the right has made a whole bunch has cried about a whole bunch of moral panics. That means men are under attack, right? This is nonsense. This is nothing, Burger, right? Like what that is, and I guess I'll before I go into that, I'll just say this one last thing is that this also combines with the last thing you said, talking about saying that men have all the privileges and women have no privileges, right? That seems like a really bad argument or whatever you said, right? Like that's nonsense. Like if you say that means you don't actually know what the discussion's about. You have no idea what feminism was trying to push, right? The idea that women have no privileges, that's not part of feminist ideology, right? They actually have a very nuanced understanding of what privilege looks like in different situations. But to imagine that women are denigrating men, you see, they're denigrating them by saying, hey, when you're sitting on a bus, right? Hey, maybe you don't spread your legs to the maximum extent possible so that another person can't sit next to you. Hey, when you're talking to me, please don't assume that I don't understand anything about a subject. I don't know, right? Those simple things, right? Because
you see, Prime, what they mean by that is
what they mean by. Please let me know.
I'm going to mansplain to you.
Well,
no,
let
it's
me.
I do want to hold on. I do want to give
more panics and men are under attack.
I do want to give Mike a chance to say what he was going to say though.
Right? I got a quick. I have to respond to something Prime said. I can do it after if I can remember.
No, just real quick now. Real quick now, if it's in your head.
So you're pretty strong in your belief that no white male has ever considered transitioning, becoming trans for any sort of societal, political, or legal privilege.
I didn't say that. No.
You said it's a I believe a fever dream culture war. Or culture war.
No, I do think it's incredibly unlikely for someone to transition just for I don't know what, to be treated better.
If
that
they did,
crazy.
Incredibly unlikely. But hold on, no,
if someone did, should they
directly? Specifically, what I was addressing was Deej's nonsense talking point that the only way to redeem yourself as a white man, right, is to become trans. Crazy, a crazy sentence he said, right? We just kind of moved past that.
It's the only way to go from being the top of the oppression tier, is what I said. But I understand.
It's difficult to understand. Well, then even then you're wrong, right? Because if that's a criticism of leftist ideology, right? Actually, if that was the case, we would talk about how our friend Wick here isn't privileged economically, right? You can change that with a super chat, of course, right? But he's not privileged economically. We have a very nuanced, complex view of what these privileges are, right? And they only all exist all at the same time, right? But again, you have no idea about this, and so you say, well, women have all none of the privileges, and men have all the privileges.
Why is it that whenever I have arguments with folks in your camp, actually about, when we're talking about granting special privileges and programs to help disenfranchised youth get into college, and I say, hey, we shouldn't make it a race thing, we should make it an economic thing, you guys always call it racist if we do that. Like the thing is that the left was pushing for the longest time race-based re-enfranchisement, not economics-based, not class-based. They pushed it based off of race. So this idea that, a poor white male is considered to the left less oppressed than a rich black person is just like, that's not the way that the social contagion around this topic operates.
I like how you just addressed, created some sort of straw man. Hey, someone that I talked with
at some point in time
thought economic considerations for college. No, specifically the Texas model for college admissions, right, which wasn't based around race at all, right? They took race completely out of the equation, but the results of their college admission programs was actually quite diverse. Yeah, a lot of people on the left love that, right? The Texas model. But that was just, I believe, banned by the Supreme Court recently. So they can't even do that anymore. The leftists were open, or have always been open, to different ways of addressing social issues, right? Some might be race-based because it just makes sense as maybe the most expedient way of doing that. Others might be better off, right? Both practically and politically to do it in an economic sense, right? But, I don't know, people have different ideas, whatever. But you said, to address you, Gen Z, you said that has anyone ever transitioned for social reasons, right?
I'm saying you said it's a fever dream, so I'm asking what's your understanding of that happening? Sure, for a societal advantage.
For a societal advantage. So I don't know how much advantage there actually is to turning trans. That seems like crazy. However, it doesn't mean that people can't perceive that there's some sort of societal advantage. So I can imagine someone somewhere, right, doing that because they think somehow their life would be turned better. I've never said that that's an impossibility, right? I think it's extremely rare, but
you would disagree
most
then.
People do it because they're actually having a transgender mindset.
So you would disagree then if someone in the court system, for example, did so to attain some legal advantage in their litigation, in their trial? Transition from a white male, the peak of the pyramid, said, I need some diversity points, let me go trans to help me out here. You think that'd just be crazy?
I think it'd be weird, but it has nothing to do with, why would I...
Well, you said it was a fever dream, so I'm trying to figure out, is this really a fever dream?
No, I wouldn't say that wouldn't happen. I just said that.
So it is real.
Might happen. No, hold on. But his idea was saying we have to move
Thanks for being here, Deej. Love you.
He has a poor. Okay, well, yeah. Deej has extremely poor understanding of what privilege means, right? Or privilege, the privileged discourse on the left, right? That's the thing I was critiquing, right? Not that hey, people don't do crazy shit, right? So if you give me some example of a white man transitioning, to win a court case, okay. Weird, but I can imagine that happens. People do crazy shit, right?
I'm saying, do you think that's a bad thing?
Is it a bad? I think it's a neutral thing. What do I care if some person transitions? I don't care. I don't care why anybody transitions for any reason, as long as with their own consent. Then why would I care why they do it?
So let me just give you the example I was building towards. It's the Brett Kavanaugh attempted assassin who showed up to his house and then with the intent to assassinate him. Gets arrested, goes through the court system, and mid-litigation transitions to become a trans woman. And the judge said in her sentencing, he ended up pleading guilty. The judge said in the sentencing, because of the trans identity, I'm going to give a lighter sentence. I'm saying, is that a bad thing in our legal system?
What was the sentence? I'm just really curious.
I think it was 8 years was the ultimate sentence.
Okay.
Okay, so
I mean, that's a hell of a gamble for that defendant to have taken, because this person would transitioned without even like, so you're saying this person transitioned solely for the purpose of getting a lighter sentence, but without the guarantee that that would happen. I mean, that, like, you have to understand. I don't know what the extent of this transition was.
Yeah,
but
like,
it's
did they
it's a
just
pretty
say they were
significant-
trans, or did they get the sniff, sniff, sniff? What? Like,
that's a
what
big gamble
happened?
to take, right?
I would
So-
imagine the resources are pretty limited to get the snip.
I don't know.
But yeah, just because it's a gamble though doesn't change the fact that they did it and it paid off and it helped
I
them
just
out.
mean, doesn't
I don't know the
that-
fact they did
there's a
do that,
possibility.
but,
Yeah, there's a possibility that this person is actually trans, right, and didn't do it for the sake of getting a lighter sentence, because there's no way to know for sure that you're going to get a lighter sentence. So if you're actually not trans and then you undergo the transition on the
That's
chance
assuming-
that
that's
you get
assuming
a lighter
there was an
sentence.
actual
Bros,
procedure.
how many years is that worth to you? Okay, to go to the full
Yeah,
trans.
yeah.
No, wait.
How
wait,
many
wait,
years
wait,
would
wait,
you
wait.
need off
Hold
your
up, hold
sentence
up.
to
5
lose,
years each.
Mister?
5 years each.
Isn't the logic though that it's purely a subjective self-determination though? You don't have to get any surgery or any procedure done. You can just identify as such,
Yeah,
right?
no. So I don't know what the
Is that what he
extent
did?
of the.
Like, what are you
Yeah, I don't
talking
know
about?
what
My
this-
understanding is that's what happened here. Either way, the judge factored it into her sentencing. That because this individual is trans, I'm going to give a reduced sentence.
Let's take it on face value what you just said,
Okay.
right? Assuming it went exactly as you said, which I'm skeptical of, but still exactly as you said, right? Yes, it would be wrong, right? If you've done a crime, right, whether it be man, woman, or otherwise, right, then you should do the time. Does anyone here disagree with that? No? Okay, great.
So, they got a reduced sentence though. They got less time than otherwise.
We already said that's
justice-
wrong. We agree.
Justice
we agree.
okay.
Yeah, you
If
shouldn't
that-
lie to
if
get
that
a
happened-
reduced sentence. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Be
So
honest.
I'm bringing
not
that
even
up.
just lie, right? It shouldn't be that your identity gives you an increased sentence or a reduced sentence, right?
True.
Like if a white man does a crime and
yeah.
that's 5 years, then you should get 5 years. Shows a black man, so should a trans woman, whatever.
Well, what I'm
But-
pushing back on is sort of this implication that we're in a cultural climate where transitioning prior to sentencing is like a rational attempt at getting a lighter sentence, when I mean, this is one example. We'd have to look at the details of what the scope of the transition was and how the sentencing testimony goes. You understand? I mean, you're a prosecutor. You know how fact specific that can be. But I just don't think that there's this pandemic of people who transition for a benefit. Because the transition itself is so costly.
The whole point that this even became a point, the reason I wanted to bring it up is because Deej did make a point about the privilege hierarchy, right? And how white men are on the top, or for purposes of today's conversation, we'll just put men at the top of the privilege hierarchy. And there are ways to benefit yourself within the privilege hierarchy under the left-wing framing of things by adopting a victimized characteristic, a victimized trait. And that is going to improve your lot in life. And if you're the side that's creating this hierarchy and holding a man, white men, as the peak of privilege and the peak of oppression, and everything is just filtered through a Marxist lens of oppressor versus oppressed, and one side of the political aisle is saying you're the oppressor or you're oppressed, and by dint of your skin color, by dint of your sex, something neither of which you can control, you are just by default an oppressor. That's just a completely nonsensical position
Not what it is,
for
though.
a man
That's
to
like
go be a part of.
That's a conservative fever dream, right? By dint of your birth, that you are an oppressor, right? That's what they think. Yeah, Wick has been oppressing me this entire time. This is
great.
The incorrect womb, right? And that's why he's been oppressing. This is nonsense. No.
Well, good. No, I'm glad you said that,
There's
because
a more nuanced discussion of what privilege means, right? And privilege also doesn't mean oppression, because those things get mixed up all the time in the Republican mindset, right? So just because someone is privileged doesn't mean they're oppressing someone, right? And someone who's oppressing someone doesn't mean they're actually privileged. These things are distinct concepts, correct?
Yes, but my point was by dint. You took a huge issue with me saying by dint of birth, by dint of skin color, by dint of sex, that is a conservative fever dream. But that the logic behind saying by dint of birth, by dint of skin color, by dint of gender, those are the concepts for white privilege. Saying that as a white person, you have privilege, and so if you're disagreeing, saying that that's ridiculous, then you'd have to agree that white privilege is a ridiculous concept.
Just real quick, Mike had an emergency and he had to drop, right? So no shade to anyone here, just emergency came up. There's been a lot of, look, can I just, as an aside, this panel has been a nightmare for booking. A lot of people dropping last minute, a lot of people saying, I can't make it up that last minute. It's been crazy, but it's been a good show. But we are winding down soon, so finish your point and then we'll...
To be clear, I wanted to stay here extra, right, to make up make it up to you. Shout out to my friend here. I'm sorry about that. Specifically the thing I addressed. What did I say to Wick? Right, like, oh yeah, he's been oppressing me because it came out of the wrong womb. Right, that's the thing I address. Right, not white privilege. I don't think white privilege isn't a thing. Right, I think it's a poorly constructed concept, right? It's pointing to a real thing, but I think it's a poorly constructed concept. I have a much larger, nuanced framework.
We'll have another debate sometime between you and Gen Z on oppression versus
love to do it
and dynamics and things like that, and leftism in general. Yeah. But unfortunately, right? It's been
didn't pay the price
over. Yeah, it's been over time. And we are at the 9 o'clock hour. I do appreciate everyone who has come. $50 from Zonia, thank you, at the last minute. It's not enough, unfortunately, but $50 to say money for the oppression that Wick has suffered due to the tardiness and lack of commitment from these panelists. True, based, thank you, W Zonia. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to tell you what's coming up, and then I'm going to give the mic to each of these lovely individuals who stayed to the end for a closing statement and tell people where they can find them. I have links to all the participants in my YouTube channel. You can click on those links and you can follow them. And please do. They've given their time out of their night graciously to come and be on my show. So please, the least you can do is give them a sub or a follow or anything like that. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern, we are going to have on Dr. Darko. We're going to have on Lactoid. We're going to have on Kalinda. And we're going to have on Ash. And we're going to be talking about the group chat leaks. And we're going to have a debate on it. Lactoid and Ash will be defending the leaks.
Bigotry. And Lactoid will be defending bigotry. He does that a lot. Yeah, right? Tell him I said so. Right?
And then Kalinda and Dr. Darko will be anti the content of the leaks, specifically. And there's 2 leaks now. It's not just one group chat. There's a second group chat.
The second leak has hit the tower, right?
It has. So that's going to be fun.
Lactoid will be defending the guys who are saying, like, I'm a Nazi, right? Or I've got a Nazi streak, right? Watch Lactoid do that. Hey, call him out. Let him know that Prime sent you.
Okay, we'll do. And then Wednesday next week, we're going to have a show on Plattner's Nazi tattoo. Prime will be there. Soy Pill will be there. We'll have a couple other people, and that should be fun. For those of you who don't know, the main Democrat, or at least one of the Democrats in the primary to become senator, recently got revealed to have a Nazi tattoo, and we're going to talk about if that's disqualifying or not. With that said, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'm going to give the mic first to Prime, and then let Gen Z have the last word. So Prime, there you go. Closing thoughts.
Sure. First of all, sorry about that, Wick. Someone needed me for something very last minute, and then they didn't actually call me up. Right? I sat on my hands for 45 minutes, waiting to do a thing that didn't actually happen. So that really sucked. I would have much rather been here with you, having a conversation. And this is my second time, I think. Maybe second time meeting our friend GenZattorney. Always good talking to him. He's a very enjoyable person to interact with. So shout out to GenZattorney here, and all the others who came in and yelled at me. That's a lot of fun. And those who agreed with me. Maybe you made the wrong choice. Who knows? Thank you for having me here. My name is Primecayes, right? I have a YouTube channel, PRIMECAYES, and a Twitch channel under that same name. We'd love to have you. We have discussions like this all the time. So please come join us. It'll be great, it'll be fun. But to the closing statements, well, I don't stand for the Democrats, right? Any party that would have Wick is one that I don't want to be a part of. I stand for the left in general. I think the way that, if we're talking about it from a political context, the way to handle problems is with policies, right? And I think our friend, I feel like our friend Gen Z was trying to make a distinction between policy and culture, and these things are two distinct things, but they're not like unrelated, right? These things are tied together, right? Was it culture or policy? Like politics is downstream from culture or something. I might be butchering that.
No, you
But
got it.
the idea. Thank you, thank you. As the idea is that these things are related, and affecting one affects the other, right? So, like, policy can shape culture, and culture can demand that policy be changed. I hear our friend Gen Z attorney when he's saying that you like culture is something that should be tackled if you want to make a dent in the male loneliness crisis, and I think so as well, right? And I think the best way, at least from a political party, to do that is just to pass policies, good policies. How do you, if it is the case, right, that it's not violence, that allows men to become their boys to become men, right? If it's becoming a provider, if that's what you honestly believe, okay, then we need to give them jobs, and not just any job, right? Not just a shitty job, not like a job that requires two other jobs just to live, right? Not a housing market where it's just like impossible to get a house in the first place, or if you do have one, right? You're just struggling. You and your partner are struggling to finance a mortgage by the skin of your teeth, right? Like, all of these things require a policy intervention, right? And so that's why I've been trying to focus on changing that. Even changing policy can change our landscape, right? If we like make our cities more walkable, if we have more like transit, right? People can like get out into the world, or are more encouraged to get out to the world. We change our physical space, right, and meet other people. We can or hey, another thing is having a 4-day work week, right? So people have more time off to interact with others, right? Interact with their neighbors, so they don't feel so tired, too tired to socialize. All these things are policy changes that can have big impacts on culture. So anyway, I do again. I appreciate Gen Z and anyone else for this conversation. And yeah, hit me up at Primecayes, Twitch, YouTube.
Check them out, gang. Give them a follow, give them a sub, all that beautiful things. Last but certainly not least, Gen Z attorney. Close us out.
Hey, appreciate it. Thank you again for having me. Always a pleasure and also a blast. It's really fun being on here. Prime, good to see you again. I think this is our second time. Always appreciate the back and forth. I'm starting to realize the online debate space, we might all have a streak of masochism within us, because it's just, yes, we can dish out the pain, but you can never really tell how much pain you're inflicting, but you can always feel the pain you're receiving. So I think we might all tend a little more masochistic. But no, fun time as always. You can find me YouTube, Gen Z Attorney, and Twitter at the Gen Z Attorney. I'm honestly probably switching back to making more culture type content, talking about like celebrity type criminal cases. But I will still have the legal and political commentary. I'm cooking something up with Ryan Mullally and gang. We've got a little crew together, and we will likely be bringing a podcast to you very soon that will have all of the awesome originalist conservative legal takes on the news of the day. So as far as the conversation tonight, basically, I mean, I'll kind of end where I began. I think the left has a serious issue with how they appeal to young men. I think they have this idea of toxic masculinity that's baked pretty deeply into the core of leftism and progressivism. I think they've wholly bought into the Marxist oppressor-oppressed matrix and applied to everything. And concepts like the patriarchy and white privilege, and so basically you're saying white men are the problem. Specifically, the conversation tonight being about men, but you're saying in large part that men
Wick's the problem. Sorry, go ahead.
Finish up.
That men have just traditionally stereotypical masculine traits have an inherent level of toxicity to them, and I think that's just it's a problem with the messaging. I think that's borne out by the fact that men are leaving the left at unprecedented rates and coming to the right. I think the right has a better vision for young men, messaging wise, as far as the appeal of having this aspirational appeal. saying that you are not inherently bad, inherently toxic, inherently an oppressor. You can come over here and be great. You know, make young men great again. I think on the policy level, because I think the cultural level is where this stuff starts. You're right. It is politics is downstream of culture. Mike was making the point earlier that culture is downstream of politics, which I disagree. I think that's backwards. I think there is some interplay, but it's largely more culture influences politics. I think there's plenty of conservative Republican policies that are conducive to the flourishing of young men, whether it's lower taxes, letting you keep more of your money to do with as you will, whether it's deregulation to create stronger, better business environments at the local level, because maybe that's the rite of passage. You know, you don't have to go off to a war and die. You can start a business and make money and provide for your community. You can and make investments in the local community. Like that could be your rite of passage. And I think that's a local government, Republican, conservative type idea, is fostering of these small businesses, whether it's pro-energy policies to lower the cost of energy to make it easier to buy, housing policy to foster more housing building to make it easier to buy houses, education reform, federalist principles. The list kind of goes on and on, but I think the Republican agenda, policy-wise, is still the better agenda for young men. So I think on those two levels, the policy level and the messaging level, I think the right is a stronger home for young men. If you are young men listening to this, we will welcome you. We listen and we do not judge. So come home to the right.
Okay, well, thank you both for being on here. We're going to let you go. Say bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Okay. Gang. Hey. You like my content? You like what I have to say? Do you like these kind of shows? What kind of shows do you want to see in the future? What kind of topics do you want to see covered? If you want to suggest topics to me, I'm very open. Please DM me on Twitter or on Discord, and I'll try to get to you if I can. But I'm always open for suggestions. Be sure to join the Discord. That would be very helpful. I will give you the link in the YouTube chat, and if you exclamation point Discord on Twitch, you can find it there. But anyway, you click the link, you accept the rules, you can see all the channels, and then you'll be able to participate. Come on in. Water's pretty fine, mostly. Oh, it's just been a couple weeks, gang. Sorry the content's a little bit slower. I usually have more panels and stuff. But we got a great show tomorrow. We got at least one great show coming up next week. Gonna try to get more. So if, again, you want to see a certain topic covered, just let me know, please. And if you are in a giving mood, consider donating, whether that be through super chats, whether that be through gifted memberships, whether that be through gifted subs on Twitch, or bits or anything like that. All that helps keep the lights on, and it is really appreciated. Anything else before I have to go? Nothing? No one? Okay. Bueller. Love you all. I'll see you guys tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. Coming in hot, gang.